Thanks, councillors. Good evening, everyone. Let's make a start. I'd like to start by declaring the special council meeting open. It's Monday the 10th of May. The time now, we've made a slightly late start at 6:02 p.m. Can I start by acknowledging the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land? We also pay our respects to elders both past and present. May I ask everyone present to please this evening turn off all electronic devices, that includes mobile phones, iPads and tablets, for the duration of tonight's meeting. Tonight's council meeting, special council meeting, is being recorded. A copy of the audio recording shall be available on the city's website within 72 hours of the meeting and often the next day. The remainder of the disclaimer can be seen on screen. In relation to declarations, I just want to read a prepared statement in relation to an item on tonight's agenda. This is a statement in relation to that matter. On Monday evening last week, the 3rd of May, the full council of the City of Canning conducted a confidential meeting to discuss the shortlisting of applicants for the advertised position of Chief Executive Officer for the City of Canning. The process will result in a significant financial benefit to the successful applicant with a salary of more than $300,000 per annum. Shortly after midnight on Monday the 3rd of May, hours after that confidential meeting, an applicant in the process emailed Jeff Blades of the firm Lester Blades, the consultants previously appointed by council to conduct the CEO recruitment process. The email was subsequently provided to me by Jeff Blades, and I congratulate Mr Blades and Lester Blades, the company, for their ethical behaviour in bringing this matter to my attention. Among other information contained in the detail contained in the email, the applicant stated, "I have received some disturbing news tonight from one of the councillors from the City of Canning that the feedback from my interview with you to the other councillors at your meeting this evening is that I was underprepared for our initial meeting. The damage caused by this alleged breach of confidentiality cannot be understated. The CEO recruitment process has been compromised, the integrity of the process has been corrupted, an applicant or applicants has engaged in a secret liaison with allegedly with a City of Canning councillor during the recruitment process, and of course the reputation and image of the City of Canning and this council has been tarnished, and perhaps irreparably. It's apparent from the correspondence that the applicant has a pre-existing relationship with a City of Canning councillor, yet no councillor has disclosed a conflict of interest so far during this process. It also seems equally likely that this applicant has been provided with confidential information that other candidates have not been privy to, and that this may include confidential financial information provided to councillors during recent discussions regarding the City's long-term financial plan. Most importantly, council cannot be assured with any certainty that the applicant in question is the only applicant in the field who has been in contact with the councillor during this process, and that this applicant is the only applicant to have been provided with confidential insider information. The conduct of this councillor, this alleged councillor, has irrevocably infected this process, and until that councillor steps forward to identify him or herself and outlines the full extent of their misconduct, this process must be ceased. Tonight there is a cloud of suspicion over this entire council, myself included. For the avoidance of doubt, I have since spoken to the candidate in question. The candidate has confirmed to me that he has indeed been speaking with a City of Canning councillor. I can now tell you this. This matter has been referred to the Corruption and Crime Commission. The Corruption and Crime Commission have extensive investigative powers under the Act and are able to access telephone and email records from service providers. An investigation will uncover the contact between this candidate and the councillor concerned. This matter has also been referred to the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries. Duncan Ord, the Director of the department, has been briefed. CEO Kyron and I will be meeting with Mr Ord, where I will formally request that he invoke Section 8.3 of the Local Government Act and authorise an inquiry to be into the following City of Canning processes. Those processes will be the CEO performance appraisal process, the process surrounding the CEO's request to extend his current employment contract, and the latest CEO recruitment process. Section 820 in brackets A of that Act states, for the purpose of an inquiry and under this division, an inquiry panel has the power of a royal commission. This may be the first time in living memory that a CEO and a mayor have joined together in the interests of integrity and ethical behaviour to call for an inquiry by the Department of Local Government into their own local government. The CEO and I have also sought a meeting with the Minister of Local Government. We are about to again discuss the CEO recruitment process this evening. Yet despite what we now know about a relationship between at least one candidate and a member of this council sitting before me, no councillor has disclosed a conflict of interest. It seems that this councillor who sits here tonight among us intends to take part in the debate on this item and also intends to cast a vote to determine council's response to his or her conduct. This would, I believe, again be a serious breach of the Local Government Act. Councillors, your community is watching and listening to us tonight, all of us. Tonight we must, as uncomfortable as it is, confront this behaviour publicly and condemn it. We need to act in keeping with public expectation, and we must do so bravely and in good faith. None of us wish to do so, but we must end this recruitment process tonight in the interests of fairness and equity, and we must not recommence it until the inquiry into this matter has been completed. Tonight, by our actions, we take a first step in restoring our standing in the community. Embarrassment and shame are not reasons to defer a matter, nor are they reasons to move it, to have it heard under cover of confidentiality. If this council and its councillors are genuine about accountability and transparency, then, as difficult as it will be, we must deal with this matter now and in the public forum, not bury it beneath a shroud of secrecy. As Mayor, I appeal to all of you to have the courage to deal with this item publicly tonight. Our community deserves it of us. Now I wish to address the councillor concerned. Your conduct has been uncovered and will be fully investigated. You may not have realised the implications of your behaviour, but now you do so. There is no hiding from what has occurred, and you need to know that I will not rest until you have been identified. I will use every resource available to me to do so, and I will continue to pursue this matter until the very end. I implore you to not commit further breaches of the Local Government Act this evening by staying in this room and engaging in this item. You will soon be asked at item 3 of tonight's agenda to disclose conflicts of interest. To not do so will be a breach of the Act. If you then knowingly remain in the room during item OC 00321, CEO recruitment process, without having disclosed an interest, and then engage in any decision making pertinent to that item, even if it were to defer the item for your benefit, then you may certainly have committed a further breach of the Act. As difficult as this must be for you, you should leave this council chamber tonight and not ever come back. Tomorrow I will expect your resignation from this council in writing. For the sake of this organisation, for the sake of the reputations of your fellow councillors, and for the sake of the candidate involved, who at this point we have chosen not to identify, you should not return after the following adjournment. Please do the right thing, as difficult as it is. Under section 8.6 of the City of Canning Standing Orders, I'm exercising my right tonight as presiding member to adjourn this meeting for 5 minutes for the purpose of preserving order, because it is my view that to continue this meeting with this councillor in the chamber would not be in keeping with the orderly conduct of this meeting. Governance, we will reconvene in 5 minutes, and I ask all councillors to please leave the chamber for that period. Governance?
6:10 p.m.
The time now is 6:10 p.m.
6:15 we'll reconvene.
And we will reconvene at 6:15. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, councillors. We're now reconvening the meeting. By my watch, it is 6:19 p.m, and for the sake of the recording, all members of the council have returned to the meeting. We now move to attendances at item 2. Apologies, there are none. Full councillors present this evening. Approved leave of absence, there is none. Disclosures of interest. If any member wishes to declare an interest, I'll ask them to do so now. CEO, have we received any declarations of interest?
Thank you, Mayor. No, yes, I have. I've received a declaration of impartiality from Mr. Stephen Kane, Director of Corporate and Commercial. It's in relation to item 10.5, sorry, it's submitted today, sorry. In relation to the CEO recruitment process, its impartiality. He's an officer or a staff member of the City of Canning. Nature of the interest is that Mr. Kane is an applicant for the position of CEO, being advertised through Lester Blades. Thank you, and that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, CEO. Moving on to item 4, which is question time for the public. I open question time now at 6:22 p.m. Time set aside for public question time is 15 minutes, which may be extended if necessary. We have no questions have been submitted from the floor. Is there anybody present that wishes to ask a question? Mr. Aldridge, do you want to step forward? I'll just read the rest of the preamble for the meeting. For recording purposes, please state your name and address and then proceed to ask your question. If an answer cannot be provided at tonight's meeting, the question will be taken on notice and an answer will be provided at the next ordinary council meeting. In accordance with policy AD02, members of the public have registered their question. That's irrelevant. We haven't received any. Mr. Aldridge, would you like to just identify yourself, please, and ask your questions?
Richard Aldridge, 5 Minota Avenue in Shelley. Through you, Mr. Mayor. My question is, with the rate increases, it says from 5.6 to 6.6% being ramped over the next 3 years. Does that basically mean that as ratepayers we can look forward to about an 18% increase over the next 3 years? Am I reading that right?
Director Kane? Oh, sorry. Oh, he's not here, sorry. I should have looked, shouldn't I? CEO?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Aldridge, I think you might be referring to the yield in relation to the yield we're looking at in terms of the return on council's assets. It doesn't refer to the actual rate increase.
Thank you. So about how much are we looking at for our rate increases for the average residential property in the Shire or in the City of Canning over the next 3 years?
CEO Kyron?
I haven't, if you're looking at the aggregate increase, there was a proposal contained within the long-term financial plan for an increase in the order of 4.5% in the first year, and that would vary over the period of the recovery plan that we're proposing.
Thank you. Could I have years 2 and 3 as well, please?
I couldn't tell you. We'll have to listen during the debate. I can't tell you that. I haven't got the papers right in front of me at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Governors, just for the record, obviously, as you can hear, we're having some problems with the audio. If we've got anyone available that might be able to have a look at it while we continue. I'll just again just make the point, sometimes the small devices strangely will significantly affect our ability to record these meetings. So if you have something in your pocket that you haven't yet put on silent or turned off, I would ask you please to do so. At section 5, item 5 of tonight's meeting, the receiving of petitions, presentations and deputations. We have no petitions. We have no presentations. At item 5.3, we do have a deputation that's been approved by Ms Sean Mawson regarding item CC 025 of 21, the reframing of the long-term financial plan. I'll just ask you to step forward if you don't mind. You have 10 minutes in which to make your deputation. Thank you. Just pull that forward if that's a little bit high. Yep.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sean Mawson from 86 Gibbs Street, East Cannington. Tonight I will be speaking about agenda item CC 025 of 21, reframing the long-term financial plan. Many ratepayers, dare I say most ratepayers, know little of what it takes to run a city. All they know is they have a rates bill to pay and the rubbish gets picked up. So it's not surprising they want their rates bill to be kept low. Lots of jobs done by the city are now invisible to residents as more and more tasks are completed by contractors. Without the city's logo being displayed on shirts and vehicles, residents have no way of connecting the work they see happening with their rates bill. But those of us in this chamber know differently. We see the expenses that are incurred every month. We can link the workers we see to the city even if they're wearing a different logo. We know that if we want that work to continue, that rates need to be increased. Being a councillor is not an easy undertaking. Sometimes you need to make unpopular decisions. Some of you may have been elected from a platform of keeping rates low, but I doubt any of your electors expected you to keep rates so low that the city got into financial trouble. Tonight you need to make a decision that may not be what all ratepayers want, but it is a decision that is needed to enable the city to keep providing what ratepayers expect. I urge you all to support the officer recommendation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Sian. And just for the record, I apologise for butchering your name early in the piece. Thank you very much for coming along, and it's appreciated. Thank you. Councillors, we'll move on to reports, the reason why we're here tonight. I'd like to bring forward the late item circulated under separate cover regarding item OC 003 of 21, the CEO recruitment process. We just received a disclosure of interest from Councillor Ponaturai. Have you got a copy of it there, Councillor? You don't? I might get...
Yep, just give it to Councillor.
I'll get Councillor Ponaturai to read the...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is OC 00321. So the CEO recruitment process. So Lester Blades have recruited me to a board position in 2020, which I have declined all the way through since the recruitment process. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for putting that on the public record. Thank you, Councillor Ponaturai. Councillors, we now move to this item, which is OC 003 of 21. The title of the item is the CEO recruitment process. The officer's recommendation is on a screen in front of you. For the sake of this matter, and I don't often do it, I will move the matter from the chair. Can I ask a seconder, please? Seconder for this matter? A seconder. Councillor Spencer-Teo. Councillor Spencer-Teo is the seconder. Councillors, I speak in favour of the officer's recommendation. I very much hope that you will also follow suit. This has been and is going to continue to be an incredibly difficult period for all of us, especially I think for those councillors who are relatively new to the council, younger councillors who may not have actually had to deal with an incident like the one we are dealing with today. But the CEO's recruitment process is fatally wounded. Can I, just for the sake of the record, read an email received by me this afternoon from the CEO and I think sent to elected members, and this is just for the sake of the record. Hello, elected members. I spoke with Jeff Blades from Lester Blades today, in brackets 2:30 p.m, regarding his ongoing participation in the City of Canning's CEO recruitment process. He has informed me he will not participate in the process while the matter of the breach of confidentiality is unresolved. That is, if Council resolves to continue with the current process, Lester Blades will withdraw. His commitment to take up the recruitment process, his commitment is to take up the recruitment process after the results of the inquiry is known, and that stands. Governance, I will ask you to append that to tonight's report, and that is unequivocal. So to do anything other than to follow the recommendation in front of you tonight, and I know how difficult it is. I mean, we were partially into the process. It's also very difficult for those candidates who are involved in the process. So they will obviously be incredibly disappointed, but we have no other course available to us tonight. So for those of you in the room who may feel that this is somewhat of an overreaction, I assure you that it is not. Our report to the Corruption and Crime Commission, subsequent report to the Department of Local Government, and my call tonight publicly and privately for an inquiry into this matter under the Local Government Act should assure you that this is a serious matter that will be chased down that rabbit hole and out the other side. We cannot continue as is. And I think also too, the problem that we have...
So, excuse me, Mr Mayor, can I call a point of order under 7.14? Councillor Sweeney hasn't got off his phone, and this is a very serious matter.
Councillor Sweeney, I have asked a number of times to actually put your phone down. We can't have phones in the chamber. Would I ask you please to turn it off and Put it
Mr
away.
Mayor, it's actually in relation, it's my notes actually for this item. That's where I've put my notes on my phone. You can have a look if you like, but that's where my notes are. and
That's an issue though, councillor, because we've been asked to put all the devices away because they interfere with the recording of this, and we've all been wondering why.
My telephone's not on. My telephone isn't on. It's just a page on my notes. It's like a page on my iPad.
Okay, so you're saying that all your notes are actually on your phone?
Yes, they are.
Okay, well, I'll rule that you can have your phone. Can you please just, I'll have to ask, I'm still actually addressing it. I hate being interrupted, any councillor, whilst you're actually doing this. It's distracting to see you flicking through your phone. Perhaps you could put it aside until we actually engage in debate on the item. I'd very much appreciate it from the chair.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Just to continue on the matter, I think the issue that we have is I find the allegation is quite unequivocal and has been confirmed to me. As I said earlier, I have had a discussion with a candidate. He confirms that he has been in discussion with a councillor, one of whom is looking at me right now, and we don't know who that is. Well, we also don't know whether it is restricted to one councillor or maybe is there another councillor involved. We also don't know how far the breach extends. Is it just the one candidate? Are there other candidates that this councillor has been feeding insider information to? This, unfortunately, councillors, I know we would like to continue. We can't. This whole process is fatally compromised and poisoned, not by the fault of this entire council, but by the councillor concerned. So as difficult as it is, I know that we must just cease the process. Lester Blades are given an undertaking that once the investigation is completed, whenever that might be, that they will then reinstitute this. But we must tonight dissolve the recruitment panel that council resolved to put together. We must do that, and there must be a resolution of council to do so. So, councillors, we will have the next meeting have a report. My understanding, CEO, is that that report will be provided to you, and that will be actually written by WALGA. We're talking to WALGA from the sake of independence, that they will actually provide, and I know there's some difficulties around this, but there always will be. It's a really, really awkward situation, but we will have a report to the May Ordinary Council meeting just to discuss interim arrangements in relation to a CEO, notwithstanding that our current CEO, Arthur Chiron, is actually leaving the council in a few short weeks. So we need to get this matter resolved as quickly as we can, and that's why this matter must be dealt with tonight. It's just unequivocal, as difficult it is as it must be, especially with members of the public in the gallery and members of the media. We must deal with this matter tonight. Is there anybody? Oh, Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the officer recommendation. In fact, I welcome it. This entire process has been compromised and it can't continue until an investigation has taken place. Integrity, transparency and honesty is paramount in our positions here on council. We don't know if this person acted alone or as part of a group, and only inquiry or investigation is going to be able to determine this. We, the council, are grassroots for our community. We're the people who our community turns to when they have everyday real life issues. Our constituents deserve strong, fair and honest community leaders who have the moral strength to attract and maintain the respect of the people who elect them. The article in Saturday's paper, well, isn't that incredibly timely? Is the system broken? Why? I believe it is, and it's because of incidents and breaches like this. I'm the new kid on the block, having only been here for just over 12 months. And sadly, this isn't the first time I've seen confidentiality breached. In fact, my very first experience with Mr Aldridge sitting here in the public gallery was in late 2019, prior to being elected. Mr Aldridge emailed me confidential leaked plans and budget information regarding the Shelley Beach master plans, leaked from a confidential briefing session presumably held in this very room. It's clear that some people here have a blatant disregard for the very foundation of which we are elected, and it's been building for years. It's clear that somebody or some people's relationships with those outside of this council are far more important than their communities or their colleagues. There's no excuses. We've all done the training, some more than once. Some even have higher qualifications of local government studies and years, if not decades, of experience sitting on council. I can safely say at the public record, I have no affiliation with any of the candidates who've applied for this position, with the exception of the obvious one, who we all know and we've all had dealings with. This breach is not only a breach of our code of conduct, oath and ethics, but it's also a breach of trust. Our individual reputations are at stake here, and our professional ones. As I said, this isn't the first breach of confidentiality I've witnessed in my short time here. We don't know if it's the same individual who leaked the master plans to Mr Aldridge, informed 6PR of the decision of the CEO's contract not being renewed, or leaked the email between the mayors and councillors regarding politicising of city events, or who contacted this candidate. What I know is that corruption is like cancer, and until treated or removed, it's only going to get worse. Here's the proof of it. How can any of us do our job effectively, constantly worrying which one of our colleagues is responsible for these breaches? What industry professional would want to work with a council or councillors who are corrupt? Our community cannot have faith in its council not knowing who to trust. This is going to be a dark cloud hanging over all our heads until this cancer is identified, treated or removed. We've got an election coming up in October, and I hope this is a wake-up call. A wake-up call for anyone who considers running for a position on council. If you have an agenda or cannot act with honesty and integrity, this is not the job for you. I hope it's a wake-up call for constituents. Please do your research before you vote. Is the person you're voting for really going to serve the community? And are they going to deliver their promises that they say in their campaign? It's time for change, and I hope my fellow councillors can join me tonight, support the recommendation. Let's be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Our employers, the ratepayers, they deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Anyone wish to speak? Councillor Porter.
Through you, Mr Mayor. So considering this is an allegation, why have we publicly thrown it out into the open?
CEO, I think you've addressed that today in an email to council. CEO.
This goes to, I did provide a response to your question as to why this is confidential. I don't know if you wish me to read that advice to you. I will find it in my emails and read that out. Sorry, just taking its time. Sorry, councillors, it's still taking its time to download all the emails.
Yeah, thank you, councillor. Just take it off your iPad. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holland, for providing this. My apologies for the time it's taken for mine to download. Hello, Councillor Porter and other elected members. The nature of the alleged breach of process and concomitant serious misconduct is not a reason why this matter be dealt with confidentially. The allegation of serious the allegation of serious misconduct of an elected member is not a matter to be held behind closed doors in public view. This alleged conduct has jeopardised the reputation of council, not the publication of the agenda item. That is where the direction of your email should be addressed. As CEO of the City of Canning, I have a duty to oversee the good governance of council, and in my role as complaints officer, I am duty-bound to act on what is alleged to be serious misconduct. I find it disturbing that all you ask is about the role of the CEO in confidentiality. Little concern seems to be expressed about the alleged conduct of an elected member and the consequences for the merit-based selection of a CEO for the City of Canning. Unless addressed, this will cast a pall over the CEO selected for the leadership role and the conduct of the council members. Given the recent history of this council, we can ill afford to trash the reputation of council again.
Thank you, CEO. That's the answer for you, but just since you asked the question through me, I share the sentiment expressed by the CEO, and as I said, I don't feel that embarrassment and shame should be any reason why we should shroud this in secrecy. I mean, people here deserve to hear what is actually happening in this council. Lester Blades, as you'll remember, at the meeting we had last Monday, actually provided us with an example of a local government in which they had some issues. For one moment that City of Canning won't now be privy to those same explanations across the sector. This is a very small sector. People will know very quickly about what is going on here, regardless of whether this is confidential or not. But we owe it to our community, I think, Councillor Porter, to deal with this matter. And there's also very strict, under section 5.23 of the Act, there's actually strict criteria about what matters can and shouldn't be dealt with under confidentiality. If we're honestly going to be transparent and accountable to our residents, how can we just hide this under secrecy? So that's basically your reason. Did you have a follow-up question? Yep, Councillor Porter.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So considering the CEO recruitment information was confidential from the CEO, was there any breaches when that information was provided?
CEO?
Councillor, no information has been provided to me in relation to the CEO recruitment process. The only matter I'm dealing with is the breach of confidentiality that has direct bearing on the process, but I do not know any of the applicants that have submitted their application for the role. I have not guided any part of the recruitment process. I've kept at arm's length from it. So there is no breach of the process, given that this has occurred and been brought to my attention, and as a complaints officer, I'm duty bound to act on it.
I'd make the point too that the CEO is still the CEO. So if he was involved in the recruitment process, but he's actually, by resolution of this council, not continuing in the role. So I agree with what he has just said, but it's not inappropriate for the CEO to now be involved in this portion of what's happening. He's still the CEO of this organisation. So that is your answer. Councillor Barry, you had your hand up.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd speak against this motion because I did ask a question earlier today in relation to some legal advice which is confidential, and if I go to my response, CEO. Well, essentially, I won't read it all because my time will run out. But the CEO replied that he would not, I will not provide the information to the elected members regarding the breach of confidentiality in the CEO recruitment process, whether under confidential seal or not. The fact that confidentiality has been breached in the CEO recruitment process lends very little to the confidence of the provision of the evidence being kept confidential. The evidence has been provided by the CCC to the DLGC in their investigation reports. In regards to Lester Blades, they have indicated they will continue they will continue to be involved in the CEO selection process when it commences after inquiries have completed. Now, I have a problem with that because I did stick my hand up earlier to attempt to draw the attention of the Mayor to make this confidential, because there's been a number of breaches of, I suppose, maybe not confidence, but codes of conduct in the past, and not ever has one come before council, not ever. Now, I had a read through this, and I mean, I'm just wondering, on page 10, if the question can be asked, there it says, on mitigations and actions, the appointment of the retiring CEO as an interim CEO while the investigations are in progress, providing organisational stability. Can you clarify just what that means to me?
CEO, I think he's talking about paragraph 10.
No, I'm talking page 10.
There's a paragraph number next to the paragraph. Have you got that with you, councillor?
Above 34. Page 10, yeah, above 34.
Paragraph 34.
Above 34, here.
CEO.
So, Councillor, I'm not sure what your question is. It makes up one of the suggestions as a means of mitigating the risk is the continuation of the role of a retiring CEO, but that's not a matter that's being resolved tonight. What's being resolved is a continuation of the CEO recruitment process. In the May meeting, a report will be presented to you, drafted by WALGA, on the options available to Council as to how they want to provide continuity of leadership post either my time, or an option is to extend the time of the existing CEO, me, or to appoint another interim CEO from within the staff, the leadership group of the City of Canning. So you're going to get a range of options presented to you next week.
So let me ask the question then, to just maybe prove that I am wrong. So in reading that, am I under the impression, and I'll ask you, you are not seeking to be the interim CEO in the time of this investigation?
I think I can answer that. So I've had a conversation with the CEO. WALGA are able to provide us with a list of retired or available CEOs that may be interested in this process. I actually stepped forward and asked the CEO whether there might be any opportunity for him. Would he be agreeable? Because he's told me earlier that he is absolutely not. Whether he would be agreeable if it was a resolution of council to stay on for a period of time until this inquiry is actually finished. That is one of the options available to this council, which will be discussed at a council meeting and will be a resolution of council. And my view on that, of course, is that continuity of leadership is important to any local government. And so, of course, that would be an option worth exploring, and we will.
Just one more thing, and I mean, with all respect, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to caution you, because this is the third time on, as a point of order, on 7:11, speaking twice. A member is not to address the council more than once on any motion and amendment, except. The point is that you've already spoken. If you would just take the questions and leave further comment, because from my perspective, I've read this. I don't need to be lectured over and over again. If you've spoken once, that's the rules for us, and it unfortunately is also the rules for yourself. My problem here is that...
I just raised a point of order, so I need to rule on it. Under what section?
7:11.
So how have I spoken twice? You've asked a question through the chair and I've answered it.
You've spoken 3 times
No.
once you've already spoken
You
in
asked a
favour.
question through the chair and I answered it, as I have been instrumental in the discussion with
I
the
asked a
CEO.
question through you to the CEO.
I'm not sure that you said to the CEO. You asked a question.
Okay, fine.
And instead of referring it to the CEO, I appropriately said, I can answer this. And I think as the chair, if I'm in a position, especially with an item like this, where it's talking about a CEO appointment, that if I'm in a position to answer that, I probably should try to do that. I'll take your point, Councillor. I will try not to involve myself in debate on the matter or to provide any further commentary on it, but I just thought on that occasion I was able to do so. But please continue.
Thank you. Now, the other thing is, from this perspective, like I said before, nothing like this has ever come before us again. If there's going to be an inquiry into it, then so be it. My main concern is that as I read it, the reason that I asked for that confidential item, and basically what I wanted to be confidential for the whole lot, was to ask questions on that. And I think you might have covered it early on in the piece. But essentially, if I can't ask questions, if I can't be fully informed, then I'm going to struggle, always struggle to vote in favour of an item like this. And I don't think it's really going to... The pall has been cast. It's cast over all of us. That's right, including you. But by the same token, it said there was an elected member who gave the information. Now, if we had gone behind closed doors, we maybe could have found out who that person was. Do we know?
If you're asking me a direct question at this stage, I do not know. And it wasn't an elected member, it was named as a City of Canning councillor. Just for the record.
That's an elected member.
Yeah, I'm just quoting what was in the email.
And as far as that goes, essentially, then I have to ask myself, why we are all, and maybe not anybody else who was in the room that night. I don't know whether it was a friend of somebody that rang up and said, oh, look, I'm councillor such and such and I've got some information for you. I don't see where there's any natural justice here, procedural fairness. If this is going to be the norm, then I wonder why anybody would want to be a councillor. But I mean, if it's going to go to CCC and or the DLGC, we understand, as you read, and you might have read the auditor's report into DLGC, I mean, some of these serious misconducts and other misconducts can take up to 112 days. Now, CCC might come back to us next week and say, this has got nothing to do with us. I'm going to send this off to the DLGC. They might come back in a fortnight and go, well, we don't know who it is. But the pall has been cast over all of us. I mean, I don't know what a previous councillor is saying. Well, if she has seen confidentiality breaches, if that's the case, they should have been reported as well. So that in itself is a breach. But essentially, if we're not going to have proper justice, I can't support it. Thank you.
I'll just make the point for the sake of the record, though, that you are making an assumption that they haven't been reported. They may well have been. You wouldn't be privy to that if they had, because you can't be under confidentiality of the Act.
Our response to that, if that's the case, why weren't they brought to this council like this one is?
I'm not sure why you're so angry about it, but anyway, we'll move on. Well, you seem to be angry about it, and we'll thump on the desk.
Mate, I love justice. I don't know about you, but I love it. And I think everybody is entitled to it.
We all are, aren't we? Anyone else want to say anything? Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Before I start, Mr Mayor, if I could just ask you, just in relation to my phone, and ask for some tolerance. I did leave work very late today and I didn't have an opportunity to go home and collect my hard copy notes, so I've had to get my son to...
Yeah, that's okay. We've covered that. That's fine.
So if that's okay,
yeah.
Before I start.
As long as it's not on, because obviously we're having some problems here and
no,
they're not
it's
going
not
away.
on. It's just,
right.
It's just so I can refer to my notes. Thanks, Mr.
Okay.
Okay, I do have a couple of comments to make, and I agree with the comments made by the Mayor and indeed by Councillor Spencer Teo in terms to our civic duty. It is our civic duty, it's our obligation to stand up and report on any matters that come before us that may contain items of corruption or any information that we receive that looks like it's corrupt. We do have an obligation to report those through to the appropriate authorities. Don't disagree with that at all, but I think a lot's been said tonight. If we have a look and just pull it back for a moment, I do have a couple of comments to make. I don't think there is a need to cease the CEO selection process. It's working again now. Because I feel at this stage there hasn't been a breach and there hasn't been a compromise. I think that we need to express some caution when we talk about these things and when we talk about items that are only coming before us as an allegation. It hasn't been proven, it's not a fact. So I don't think we should just become judge, jury and executioner entirely on an allegation, and I think some of the things that I've been seeing and hearing, unfortunately, it sort of leads to that. We don't know if this assertion is even true. You know, we are only dealing with an allegation, so we shouldn't be overreacting on an allegation. It's only a claim of an unproven fact. Selection processes, from time to time, deal with these issues. It's certainly not uncommon. When information comes to hand like this, it needs to be tested, investigated and proven correct before any informed decision can be made. There needs to be a very clear distinction, I believe, between a fact and an allegation. So what we should be doing is following the Code of Conduct as it stands under Section 6, accountability, when something like this comes before us. And that says a council member should base his decisions on relevant and factual information, meaning it needs to be investigated before it becomes a fact. Secondly, in terms of our obligations, in accordance with the Corruption, Crime and Misconduct Act under Section 26, subsection 2, you must notify the Commission in writing of any matter which you suspect on reasonable grounds or concerns or may concern serious misconduct. Well, if someone wants to make a claim or some type of allegation relating to serious misconduct, we're obliged to inform the CCC. That's always been very clear to me. I'm not sure why the CEO thought it was necessary to seek advice from the legal fraternity or request a legal opinion on the matter. Perhaps we need to get some further clarification on that. The content of this allegation is serious and the CCC must be notified. It will then be tested to see whether it's a fact or not. Because it may be the case this is a false allegation. We don't know that unless the material is thoroughly investigated. And as far as Jeff Blades is concerned, well, you know, we're talking about procedural fairness in the application process. We have an appeal process for applicants who believe they have been treated unfairly. I'm sure he has dealt with this before. It does happen often in selection processes. If any applicant feels aggrieved and feels there was a breach of confidentiality or any other reason at any stage of the selection process, they can lodge an appeal. It doesn't stop the selection process because their claim may not be proved, or in fact it may be false. And of course, if an appeal was successful, it would only mean that we start the process again. But I think we're a long way from that, councillors. The matter has been reported to the CCC, as it should be, for assessment, investigation, and that is our obligation. It doesn't say anywhere that I see in any legislative authority that we must stop being a council or stop running the business of council. The matter before us is being dealt with appropriately and our reporting obligations are being met. The selection process, I feel, has not been compromised and I think it should go ahead and not be suspended. So that's where I sit with that. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? You've already spoken. You want to ask a question? Councillor Spencer-Teo. Councillor Spencer-Teo, is Councillor Sabiri's also off?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just a question. As I recall, we were given two lists. There was a list of candidates who weren't successful in making it on the long list. I understand and appreciate the need to keep the candidate in question confidential, but can you answer whether it was the candidate who a particular councillor asked why they were not successful on making the long list?
CEO, I'm not sure if that would be appropriate or serve any great purpose to do that, so I won't. No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Holland?
At the moment, Mr Mayor, I've just got a couple of questions.
Of course, you go ahead.
That I need clarification on before it's hard to get your head around all this, to be quite honest.
Sorry?
It's hard to get your head around all this, to be quite honest.
Yes, terrible, isn't it? Yep.
The question I have, I just want to make sure that I heard you correctly when you made your address to council earlier in the evening, that you said that it is alleged that a councillor had been in multiple contacts with this person, or just one at that?
No, I didn't say multiple contacts. I have my statement here.
Yeah, could you clarify that for me, please?
Gosh, I might have to find it here.
No big deal. It's just that that's what I thought you said, and I actually did think
I think I
you
said it's apparent from the correspondence received that the applicant has a pre-existing relationship with a City of Canning councillor. So I think that might be what you're referring to. So for that conversation to have occurred on that night, the applicant must have known that the matter was being dealt with on that night, and obviously that information would need to have been shared with him that we were meeting that night. If he was to contact the councillor or vice versa, it seems implausible that that was the first contact between the alleged contact between the two.
Well,
but that's what I said.
I won't go into whether it's plausible or implausible. But just excuse my ignorance here or whatever, did anybody else know outside this room that we were discussing that? The whole matter was confidential, but was it known that there was a meeting to discuss that?
I might call forward Keely Haywood, who's the Executive Manager of HR for the City of Canning. Keely, can I just get you to, for the sake of the record, just introduce yourself to the councillors? The question from Councillor Holland was how tightly held was the information about the briefing last Monday night?
Thank you. Keely Haywood, I'm the Manager of People and Culture. I was present in the room that evening as well, providing administrative support. There wasn't a public statement in relation to a meeting on that evening. I don't think there would be any more than a few people who may have been aware that it was on.
Thank you. Councillor Holland?
Yes, Mr Mayor. The reason why I'm so concerned about whether there was previous engagement between the alleged councillor or not becomes quite pertinent. For the reason being, as Councillor Sweeney said, it's coming to a question if you don't mind, that this is an allegation at this present time. But if this was the first time of it, then what worries me, was it the person who was it alleged to have been who actually did make the call? And how do we know that happened? Are you following me, or do you want me to spell it out in a little bit plainer?
Can you spell it out in song and verse? I didn't quite follow exactly the gist of your argument.
That's all right. What I'm getting at is, if this was the first instance, what is it that this alleged councillor, if it was a councillor, well, it seems like maybe it has because it was in that room. What's to stop this alleged councillor X ringing up and saying, "Hi, this is Councillor Y"?
Yeah, I'm not.
Then that worries me about the CCC investigation and everything, and it worries me about putting this off for that. What is to stop? I'm not saying that happened. I don't know what happened, but what is to stop that happening?
I guess you can. It's a hypothetical that I'm probably not in a position to answer, and nobody else here is either. Yeah, people can play games. Look, I'm not going to. I can't answer it, Councillor. Sorry? Oh, just in relation to that, if that's what you mean, obviously call charge records or reverse call charge records, so CCRs or RCCRs, are actually a matter of, it can be actually subpoenaed under warrant, and it's something that's done frequently by police. And as you know, I was a police officer for nearly 25 years. So if that's what you're asking, the contact between that councillor, the alleged councillor, and this person will easily be determined by the Corruption and Crime Commission, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, which can, but do you think that this would warrant that sort of extensive investigation that you're going to like with, as far as I can see, as yet, it's not a criminal offence that I've seen, is a code of conduct, not a bad one, I'll agree, but would that warrant, as Councillor Barry said, the CCC might just say, look, this is not important enough for another, which is my word, for it, therefore none of that will happen. There's a good chance that we might never find out that if any of this actually did happen, as the allegation suggests.
We can only place some hope in the process, and I think going on, Councillor Spencer Teo referenced a newspaper article on the weekend, but didn't really talk about what it was. It was an article for the Record from Paul Murray and journalists talking about apparent failings in the department, and the Auditor General's report uncovering the fact that there seems to be very little compliance action by the department. So I guess all we can say is, and I might get the CEO to talk you through the conversation he had with Duncan Ord, the Director General of the department, but it seems very apparent to me that the department is motivated to investigate this matter. And for the record, for a councillor to corruptly use their position to either cause a detriment or gain an advantage is an offence under the Act that actually attracts a penalty of up to 2 years imprisonment and $10,000 fine. So that is, I would think, serious enough for them to investigate. But CEO, can I get you just to speak to the conversation, if you don't mind, with Director General Ord?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I spoke directly with Mr. Ord. I outlined the circumstances. I also outlined the advice we received from Neil Douglas from McLeod's. Neil Douglas's advice is that this reaches the threshold based on the information which he received of a case of serious misconduct. And he mentions in his statement may or whatever in his advice. I don't think any lawyer is going to be unequivocal about the advice that he provides or they provide. This was the reason I sought the advice was to confirm my original view that this matter should be referred to the CCC, and whether it reached a threshold of serious misconduct. It does. Mr. Ord acknowledged that it was of such serious nature that the department would investigate the matter subject to the information being provided to him. I provided that information late on Friday night at the same time as I provided it to the Corruption and Crime Commission.
Just thank you, Mr. CEO. Look, sorry to go on with the questions, but like I said, I'm struggling with this one, and I just want to make sure when it comes down to the vote, this is a very serious matter. I want to be as clear as I possibly can. What are the ramifications, considering the email we got later on saying that Lester Blades would stand down if we proceeded? What are the implications on that as far as proceeding? That would mean we would have to start again now, or would it mean we would just replace Lester Blades with a new company? Or what exactly does that mean?
Lester Blades were appointed through a resolution of council, so we would need a call for tenders, and it would have to be another resolution of council. But CEO, am I on the right money there?
Yeah, you're right, Mayor. Lester Blades said that they would not continue with the process where they believe that the process has been compromised. And if you were to start, Councillor, that would mean you would need to make another decision in relation to the appointment of another recruitment consultant. They would need to, we've already gone through the PDs and the selection criteria, but they would need to advertise again. And then you would go through the process of forming a selection. Well, if you maintain the current panel, you would continue with the current arrangement with a new consultant.
Councillor Holland, anything further?
Yeah, so that means it more or less starts again. Is that what you're saying?
For the record, the CEO said yes.
Thanks for the moment, Mr.
Thank you. Councillor Barry, a question?
Well, it's more of a point of order. I'd like to move that, if it's possible, under Part 14.1, suspension of local law, a member may at any time move that the operation of one or more of the clauses of this be suspended. It's to be done by an absolute majority, and I think the one that I'd like to move is the speaking twice, which is 711.
Just give me a moment, Councillor. Councillor, I have no issue with that. If you wanted to suspend standing orders so the matter could be, so people could speak more than once, I've got no issue with that. You need to have a you need to have a seconder for that. So you are, just for the record, you are moving to suspend which section?
711.
711,
speaking twice.
He needs to get another move though.
So for the record, Councillor Barry has moved to suspend standing orders in relation to 7.11 of the City of Canning Standing Orders Local Law 2015. The item there is in relation to speaking twice, and that would then allow councillors who have already spoken to speak again, infinitum, I expect. There's some discussion for the record by governance that Councillor Barry has already spoken on the motion, and so should not be able to therefore move this matter. But I expect that what has happened previously, or someone will just jump up and do it on his behalf. So I think I will allow it. Well, no, and I think I will allow it. I will allow it. So can I have a seconder for Councillor Barry's motion? If there is a seconder, Councillor Porter. Councillor Barry, do you want to speak to your motion?
Yeah, just briefly. I mean, and it may not be to the benefit of anybody, but the point that I make is there seems to be a lot of information coming this way, and from my perspective, I mean, I can ask questions, but I mean, from what I've heard, if I need to speak again on it, then I have the right to do so, because, like I said, with all due respect, Mr. Mayor, I mean, you've made much comment, so as the CEO, so I think it's only fair that we have the opportunity to do the same if it arises in some of our elected members' minds. Thank you.
The seconder was, sorry, Councillor Porter, have you got anything you'd like to say?
Nothing to add, but just a better, more debated, the better, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't agree with that, and I'd speak against it. And the reason why I speak against it is that most of the council here haven't even yet spoken. You have the matter of asking questions to seek clarity on any item. You raised the point that I've spoken and given commentary a number of times. My role here to actually respond to questions asked through the chair. If I feel it necessary, I will certainly ask for direction from the CEO or executive officers. But if I'm able to do so, I will also do my best to answer those questions. So your view may be that I'm being afforded some sort of additional benefit to everybody else here at the table. Unfortunately, Councillor, that is the role of a presiding officer. So I see no reason why we need to speak infinite about this matter. You have already spoken. I have already spoken. Councillor Spencer has spoken, Councillor Sweeney has spoken, but if we are going to continue speaking on it, every time someone speaks it raises another matter that someone else wants to speak to. You said yourself, I'm not sure that this really benefits anyone, and I have to agree. I think we need to make a decision and move on. There is ample opportunity and evidence here in front of you on which to base a decision, and that is the evidence in front of all the councillors here, including legal advice and a report tabled with a recommendation in front of you. So I would ask those councillors who haven't yet spoken to speak, but I do not see any reason for each of us to be able to speak a second time and a third time and a fourth time, and we will be going around and around in circles all night for one councillor.
Mr Mayor, I'm just
Why are
wondering...
you interrupting me while I'm speaking to the matter?
Well, I'm just wondering...
Are you calling a point of order?
Well, only to the extent that we haven't voted on what I've moved, and you're speaking.
You have to vote, you have to debate the suspension of 7-11.
No, I think you might be dead right. If you're calling a point of order, I'll support it.
Thank you.
Councillors, we've got a mover is Councillor Porter. He didn't add much to further to the debate. Councillor Barry has moved the motion. Can I please put this matter to the vote? Governors, before we call the vote, is that right? I mean, surely we would debate it before calling the vote. It's not an amendment, he's moving a motion. Just stand by, councillors.
The motion to suspend Standing Orders Clause 711 has been carried, 8 in favour, 3 against. Those voting against, Councillors Kunza and Spencer Teo, and the Mayor.
Thank you. The matter has been carried. We have now suspended standing orders in relation to 7.1, speaking twice. Who would like to speak now? Councillor Kunza, go ahead.
Yes, Mr Mayor. Look, I'll speak in favour of the Office of Recommendation, though it gives me no pleasure. Look, there were some questions asked earlier with respect to, I guess, the relationship, and I sort of agree with comments before about how much information we have, but with respect to the information that has been provided, it appears that the candidate in question had access to information from the long-term financial plan, so they which also is confidential, so that would point towards some sort of a relationship or more than one conversation, and would mean that there would be a perceived benefit provided here, and people may not, I guess, like the way we've gone about it in the last few days, whether we're confidential or not, whether we should be stopping or not, but the reality is, based on the information provided, there appears to be credible evidence that the whole process has been compromised, and I don't know how we could make any other decision than what the Officer recommendation here tonight. If you believe that maybe 6 days ago it should have been handled different, that's, I guess, to me, is not a big point tonight. The reality is that we can't continue this process. It has been compromised, and there's no way to continue. Now, I've got to say, I don't know what adjective to use. After hearing the alleged conduct, I'm astonished, I'm deflated, I'm angry, I'm quite appalled, because these allegations, if true, basically represent a slap in the face to this council, to the community, to the ratepayers, to the residents, to the candidates that have applied for the position. It's inexcusable behaviour. And if true, I mean, for the fact that we were notified several times about how it would compromise the process if it was to happen, and then to be here a week later, again, I still don't know what adjective to use that actually feels as though I've, I guess, described how I'm feeling appropriately. Well, basically, when we were given the confidential comments, I declined to do so because, I mean, I didn't know any of the names, and I didn't really see a point in keeping a confidential document that served no purpose. But I want to categorically say in this room that it was not me that did that, because it's quite that compromised this process, because I'm quite, again, angry that this cloud has put over this whole council that already has reputational issues, and now all of us actually could potentially be the person. And I'm categorically saying in public that it was not me. And I wish everyone here could do that. But I don't see, I mean, a few people have said that they don't agree with the officer recommendation, but to leave here without any decision is not tenable. There's not been anything proposed. And I've got to say, I don't know how we could take any other steps other than what's been presented before us. I do hope that when this all concludes, we can get a high caliber CEO to walk in the shoes of Mr. Karam. But the reality is that's something we'll have to deal with at another point in time. But I ask that council supports this, and that we can, I guess, address the issues as best we can.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Holland.
Not a question. So I'll address it. So if you want to put the timer on.
That's fine.
No, not a question. I was in a lot of two minds about this recommendation. As soon as I read it, I felt it didn't go far enough. I felt it went too far. I felt it didn't have any evidence at all, and I felt it did have evidence. I felt it was an allegation, then I felt it wasn't an allegation. I've listened to everything that's been said here tonight. The thing that disturbed me the most tonight is, well, from Monday, from when we were first told about this, that if it was a once-off, I was thinking, why? For what reason? For what possible reason would you do this? If there was something more than once, then that changes that perspective. It becomes a little bit clearer. The thing that, in some respects, I'm totally in total agreement with Councillor Kunza. This has cast aspersions on my character, and I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And I will categorically say it was not me, and I will hand over my phone records without any hesitation. I will let them come, well, not coming into my house, but I will let them go and search through my stuff, because I've got nothing to hide whatsoever. But the thing is, it's mud and it's been thrown at me. You can say, well, it's been thrown at the council. Yes, it has. Obviously, I understand that too. But in this situation here, it's actually been thrown at me. And that I find abhorrent. This is not something, I thought it was just a breach of code of conduct. Still not great, of course. I didn't think that originally it was a CCC matter. I've been enlightened a little bit more on that, and I can see that point of view. I understand Councillor Sweeney's ideas, his argument that he had before completely. I don't think this is the greatest recommendation that I've ever seen in my life, but for the life of me, I can't see a way of improving it either. I can't see a way of going ahead without it, actually, now. I think for the good of the council, and we have to support this motion now. Like I said, I was in two minds, actually 4 minds. I didn't have a clue where I was bloody going on this. But that's what we come into this chamber for, is to actually listen to other people's perspectives. And that's why I actually supported Councillor Barry's motion to speak twice, because, Mr Mayor, I asked you probably 4 or 5 questions before, and that could have affected someone's way they were thinking. And hopefully that's what it was, more clarity. I would have liked some of that email trail that was asked for. I understand why it was not given. But yeah, I would have liked it so that we had more evidence, if you want to call it that, for lack of a better expression. I think this will come out depending on how far the CCC go. And if they go to that whole extreme of the phone things and all that sort of stuff, I don't understand why the person, if that's the case, does not come forward now. But the thing that worries me about just saying that statement, this is just an allegation to start with, by somebody I don't know, about somebody apparently that I do know that may or may not have done it. And that worries me. That is the natural justice part that I think Councillor Barry was talking about. Somebody here has been accused by someone we don't know who has done it yet. Aren't I allowed to face my accuser? Isn't that one of the fundamentals in law as well? This is a horrible, messy situation here. But like I said, I'll vote for this motion because I think it has to be done. Another thing that worries me about is that 118 or 181 days or whatever it was, excuse me, Councillor Barry, I can't remember, saying that how long an investigation takes, which I find is very worrying. I think that article by Paul Murray actually said it was more, it said it was over 300 days that some of these investigations were taken, which I find not acceptable at all. But I don't know how to expedite that at all, and I don't see another way around doing this except for this motion. Like I said, I don't think it's the best one. It's parts of it I don't overly agree, but I actually haven't got a recommendation to change it. And the whole situation here worries me. And like I said, and like Councillor Kunza said before, I can categorically say it wasn't me. So I thank you for your time, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor, and you'll have another opportunity to speak if you'd like to. Councillor Barry, you've had your hand up. I might say a few words just first, if you don't mind, since I now have the opportunity to speak twice. So thank you, Councillor Barry and others. Only in respect of addressing some of the things that was just raised, and probably just providing a little bit of insight from my own point of view. The question was asked about, why would somebody do this? Honestly, why would somebody do this? I guess if you are of a mind, corruption takes all sorts of forms, but if you're of a mind and you're able to actually influence the outcome of the council, and probably wouldn't have happened on this occasion, but if you were able to put in place a CEO, if you're able to help him into a role, and he then won a position in which he now earns $300,000 plus a year, doesn't he then owe you something? Isn't that how corruption works? You ask why. I guess as far as the allegation goes, and yeah, it's an allegation, but the credibility in the allegation is that I've actually phoned and spoken to this person. They are an executive level person applying for executive level roles. They applied to be the CEO of this Band 1 local government. That's the sort of company they keep, and that's the level that this person is at. Why would he sully his own reputation by outing himself in this way? Why would he claim to have actually been speaking to a City of Canning councillor if he had not? Why would he? So not only did he do it to Jeff Blades in writing, he then followed up in an interview, a conversation with me, and did exactly the same thing. I'm not certain why he would do that. So I say yes, it hasn't been tested, but how can we continue with this process? What justification could we give people in the community that we are holding ourselves to a higher standard of behaviour than others in the community? Isn't that what we should be doing as a board, as a group of elected people in the community? Shouldn't the standard of our own behaviour and our own expectations be far higher than perhaps the expectations of the community? So there is a whiff of corruption around a process in which we are now embedded. How can we not just walk away from it? We have to. So to fumble on through this, and at the end of it, we may end up with a recommendation for a person who has also been speaking to a councillor. The whole matter is tainted from woe to go, and it's not our fault. It's not my fault. It's not the fault of probably all of us here except for one person. But we have to have the courage now to confront what has happened. Councillor Barry?
Quickly.
Yes. Question?
I'm not sure that this is appropriate. Rule it out of order if you wish. Did the person concerned, male or female, did he name the alleged councillor?
Did they?
To you? Did they name the alleged councillor to you?
No, they didn't. No. But but having said that, I've absolutely.
They didn't deny it.
No, they didn't. They didn't deny it. In fact, they confirmed a number of times that they've been talking to a councillor, and then they actually said that they will be not providing the name of their councillor. So it's a real shame, actually, because at the end of the day, at the moment, I don't feel that they're complicit. I think their involvement probably inadvertent. But now that they've actually taken a step to actually cover the involvement of a councillor here, that I think takes on a whole new complex meaning. But in any case, that's to answer your question, that's what's happened. Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Just get you to talk into your mic. Your mic facing. That's it. Good on you. Thank you.
Well, just pulling up something on the iPad, but I'll speak. Just through you to, if you could, to Councillor Porter. earlier asked a question in relation to conflicts. I'm just wondering whether he might have been talking about Section 570 of the Act.
Councillor Porter, were you talking about Section 570 of the Act? Can
I
you
would
tell
have
us
to be
about Section
reminded
570?
what was in that section.
Sorry?
I would have to be reminded what was in that section to be able to tell you if it was or wasn't.
Probably, Councillor
Yes,
Councillor Barry, you could probably remind us. I'm sure you'd like to. What's Section 570?
In the Section 570, in this section, employee includes a person who, under contract for services with the local government, provides advice or a report on a matter. An employee who has an interest in a matter with respect to which the employee is providing advice or report directly to council or committee must disclose the nature of the interest in giving the advice. Once again, that's a serious misconduct. Penalty of subsection, a fine of $10,000 or imprisonment for 2 years. Now, you may choose to answer that if you wish. I mean, whether you believe that there was maybe a conflict within the report or not.
I'll take that on notice, but quite frankly, confidentiality, as you know, you can't read one act without actually referencing it to another. So confidentiality extends to, I'm sure you'll know, also an investigation. So you can disclose certain information if you're doing so for a number of reasons. And
if it's to a minister and stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't believe any breaches
that.
occurred, but if you'd like to concentrate on the process rather than being shocked about the allegation, that's entirely up to you. So
well, I'm not necessarily shocked about the allegation, but I can't move away.
You're not shocked about the allegation?
No, it's probably the process that we're going through tonight. I mean, it is like a number of people, or at least my fellow ward member from Nicholson has told us about the legalities of it. It is nothing more than an allegation. And the other question I have to ask, and you've said you've spoken to this person, so essentially if they won't say, and the question then is, can they be compelled?
They can be compelled to answer questions. As I said to you earlier, under Section 5.8, I think it is, of the local government, 5.80, it says that an inquiry called by the Department of Local Government acts with the same powers as a Royal Commission, and actually uses the words Royal Commission. That's a direct quote from the Act. So, yes, they can compel witnesses to appear.
So, going along with that, you're saying that, I think earlier in the piece, did you say that between you and the Mayor you're going to see Duncan Orden ask for an inquiry?
I won't be asking for an inquiry, I'll be demanding an inquiry. Just make it patently clear. I'll
Then
be demanding an inquiry.
Then that person can be subpoenaed, I would assume.
Which person can be subpoenaed?
The person that made the allegations.
They can be. Yeah, of course they could be subpoenaed. I'm not sure if it's a subpoena, but certainly once an inquiry's been called, then look, I think we're probably getting a bit ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, no, I mean, like Councillor Holland, I mean, you know, I'm a little bit mystified as to a person who we know where it was in the pecking order, and then makes an allegation against supposedly a councillor. For what reason? What was the gain by him or her, whoever it was?
Well, you're asking me a question, so you asked me a question, so I'll answer it. But aren't you more interested in the fact that that person was able to actually quote from conversations in this room during confidential briefing?
But I don't know who the person was. This is half the reason that I wanted to go behind closed doors, to ask those questions. And here we are now, we're saying we don't know who the... Well,
the
some
horse is
people...
bold in relation to going behind closed doors.
Some people know who it was, but have been told that they won't disclose who it was.
Who's been told that they know who it was?
You just said you rang the person.
Oh, the applicant you're talking about? Yeah, I know who the applicant is.
And they said, but I won't tell you. So, I mean, I'm just wondering where all this goes. What is the gain to either of them, if that was the case? And it's an allegation. I mean, essentially, you can say what you like, but I cannot support it. I mean, if you're going to have an inquiry, it'll go where it goes. I think, like Councillor Sweeney said, we don't have to stop the whole process of government. We don't have to stop, we disband the selection panel. What would be the sense of that?
So you're saying that you would support this the committee still going and the process to continue
If
on the basis that we may have a corrupt councillor
May.
I just said May, I think.
Yes.
But you're saying that it would be appropriate, and then in 6 months' time, after we actually find out from the inquiry, if an inquiry is invoked, that there was corruption, and maybe it includes more than one councillor, then what do we do with that CEO that was appointed? Do we then rescind the appointment because the whole matter was corrupt and tainted and compromised? Or do we just say, look, whatever, when we can't be sure? I mean, I'm unsure what your point is here.
Well, I mean, basically, Mr.
Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that, and you said that.
Oh, I'm asking, is that what you're saying?
But within everything you said, there was a lot of if, buts and maybes.
There are a lot of if, buts and maybes in everything. But
exactly.
I'm telling you, well, hang on a sec, as far as if, buts and maybes go, the CEO just recounted to you in a public chamber on the record that he had a conversation with the Director General himself, personally, of the Department of Local Government, who has told him that this matter will be inquired into. So if that is not comprehensive enough evidence for you on the public record, I'm not sure what you want, Councillor Barry. I have recounted a conversation that I had with an applicant today who told me that he has been in contact with a City of Canning councillor. Jeff Blades has provided me with an email that actually details that conversation, and he quotes the conversation that occurred in this room on that night. So if you're telling me that you see nothing to worry about here, well then you should probably vote to just continue with the process.
With all that information that you do know, that was found, I presume it's confidential, that by the same token, we're not to know.
You seem determined to keep pushing the point about this evidence. There's an Act of Parliament called the Evidence Act, and police officers like myself, and I'm sure Councillor Sweeney, a former police officer, know about it. If you are asking that, if you feel it's appropriate that the documentary evidence that might be the basis of an investigation by the Corruption and Crime Commission should be bandied around to a council that has proven time after time that it cannot be trusted, and I will, oh no, you can raise your eyebrows and shake your head.
Point of order. So you can't adversely reflect, what is it, section 7.17, a member is not to reflect adversely on the character or actions of another member or employee.
I rule against that, and I'll continue, and if you want to make an issue of it, please go ahead. So,
what is it? The one where we've talked to overall.
Yeah, well, you find the section. But in relation to that, I was on 6PR only a few weeks ago defending 2 leaked emails from this council. So if you're telling me that...
What were they?
Oh, come on. So if you're telling me that this council has not had issues with information being leaked outside of this chamber, come on. I cannot understand this shock on your face here.
So, and you're saying that you're attributing it to here?
I'm saying that this council has been, at times, unable to retain confidentiality about important information. And so if you feel it would be appropriate for us to hand over evidence that is now in the hands of the Corruption and Crime Commission and the Director General himself, I'm sorry, you're just going to have to accept that. You're not getting a copy of it.
Okay, no, I beg to differ.
You will beg to differ, no problem, noted. You've begged to differ. Anyone else? Councillor Porter.
I found the bit, but it's a bit too late. But I did have a question. So with Lester Blades, would we still be paying them if they withdrew?
We would need to examine the contract, but CEO, I'll get you to answer that.
We pay Lester Blades in instalments. We've already paid them for the advertising, and we've also paid them for the first meeting. No, we haven't paid the second instalment. I'm getting the acknowledgement from my manager there. We would pay them for the work they've done up to date, yes, but we won't pay them past that because they hadn't, if they withdraw, they won't be incurring the cost.
But if they restart the process in 6 months' time or whatever, obviously we would have to pay that all over again because they'll need to re-advertise and start the whole process. Councillor Ponaturo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also feeling like in mystery because I just want to know why this person couldn't tell that person's name. And definitely I can say I didn't even know any of those candidates or whomever the applicant was there. And though I have declared that Lester Blades had been in a position to recruit me another board position. But just a couple of questions I just want to ask you. So this came to your and CEO's light on the Tuesday morning, but we weren't aware till Friday night. But obviously you have to go through the process, and I always respect the process and people's positions. So is that... I understand, yes, whether it's a CCC matter or DG's matter or standards panel, I'm not an expert in finding out where should that go and who should do that. But we all are here, and we took an oath when we were elected that we will act ethically. But just the fact that we didn't know anything about it, we only came to know, and over the weekend just we have to read that late item. But on the other hand, we are living right now in a pandemic time, and very often things are planned and we are not able to do that. For example, I'm not trying to pinpoint on my wonderful WA government. So, for example, we knew the hotel quarantine system wasn't working, or it probably, whether the government knew or the experts knew it, but the government actually functioning, or the investigation is still happening, whether in the January 31st, in one hotel, there was a quarantine infection took place. And then people were in a similar situation, and Professor Veeramantri, whomever did the investigation, improvement, but still the hotel quarantining is happening. Whether the Prime Minister or the federal government not able to send us a vaccination, still the government is functioning. So I'm trying to work out, we are also local government, we are elected as well. So that because we are doing an investigation, are we not able to have a segregation of duties in our head? What do we do, and from here? Because we are all professional, and we should behave. So because the government's much bigger than us, federal and state government right now, the examples which I'm using, they're not stopping. I mean, people in the aged care should have been vaccinated, or maybe not vaccinated because all the vaccination didn't arrive, or whatever they happened. But the Prime Minister doesn't stop his job, or the health ministers, or any of the people in the systems or departments don't stop the jobs. So my question is, so we are also elected members, we have a lot of responsibilities. So yes, we are going to take care of our community, and we have to be ethical, we got to be transparent, accountable. So why can't we, and also the council made a decision in October. I'm not saying with due respect, CEO, but I'm just saying we have come so far, and what do you have to stop and start, or can the investigation go separately, and can we go further ahead? So, and also I must say earlier, the phone calls can be tapped and can be, I know these experts you all are sitting, but I must say in my own experience, I've been in one of the life-threatening phone calls in 2009. AFP couldn't even find the person. They even pinged, and they did so much of work around Western Australia, they never found the person or the telephone. So I wanted to make the correction here in this council. So that wasn't tapped and found out, never, even till today. But
you're looking at me, Councillor Torre, am I subject to this or something, or what?
Councillor, just continue.
Okay, so that's why I'm feeling fairly miserable. Why we are actually shifting the problem? We are not actually dealing with the problem. Very often in leaderships, we learn about if there's a problem, we don't shift the problem. We actually have to eliminate the waste so that we can actually get on with efficiency. But here we are sitting around, and as a collectively, we are bearing this weight, and which is I have not done, and I don't even know these people, and why are we going through this? And if the person, why the person didn't want to tell the name and make this process much easier, and what are they gaining? So it's all going into my head, and I also listen to everybody's debate, both sides, so I'll keep thinking. I'm not saying where I'm going, but so much is going in our heads.
If you could throw some light on where you're going, I'd appreciate it.
I mean, I'll soon, no. I mean, we're all trying to, because we only know what you read, the document just in this evening. This is the first conversation we're having it, and we have to make a decision, and it is fairly very important.
You did ask a question, though, just in relation to why we can't, I think you were saying, why can't we park this to one side and just continue? And you asked the question.
Yeah, let the investigation go, and let's also get on with the job as a process.
You asked the question, though, and you referenced the state government and COVID and a few other things. I would make the point that the state government, Mark McGowan's cabinet at the moment, I guess if they were in the middle of a process and they found some level of alleged corruption amongst their own cabinet, I don't think that they would be continuing with the process. And I think, and I don't speak for the government obviously, but I would think it'd be highly unlikely that they would continue with the process when it's on the front page of the Western Australian and credibility around members of the cabinet and their activities have been questioned. I think, you know, so you asked me the question, I'm answering it. I can't see how we can continue with this process. That's why the recommendation is before you tonight. We will still have a CEO, so it's not like we're not continuing business. We'll either appoint an interim CEO, and as we know, we can appoint a CEO either from our own ranks or actually bring one in on an interim basis, and then we'll go through this process once the inquiry's finished. So we're not stopping the business of local government, no detriment to us or the city. It just means that we're doing what is right and dealing with a very important matter and trying to root out an allegation of corruption.
Mr. Mayor, you mean to say that every other action of any of us was found, has it all been handled fairly, like in fairness, anybody breached other people? Has it been all of those been complained to standards panel or any other matters? I'm just asking the question.
So you asked the question. The standard panel deals with minor complaints. So if you're referred to the standards panel, this is not what this matter is about. This is a matter that's gone to the Corruption and Crime Commission of Western Australia and will probably result in a local government inquiry into this process run by the Director General at the authority, with the authority of the Minister. This is a whole quantum leap above what you're talking about. This is, you know, this is an allegation that may lead to allegations of corruption. That's what this is about. This process has a $350,000 annual salary attached to it. So we talk about benefit. This is not, we're just not talking about leaking a couple of emails about a local association or, you know, someone being mean to each other. This is an allegation that is at a far higher level than that, Councillor. And we, as in our position, are bound by legislation to report it. We can't look past serious misconduct. It's actually an offence not to. So we must report serious misconduct, and that's what we've done. The panel only deals with minor misconduct.
Okay. Do we know roughly how much it will cost as well? Because there will be a cost involved, am I right?
Well, I guess that's why I was probably trying to encourage whoever it was, if it is somebody amongst us, to probably do the right thing and step out of the room and never come back. Because I'm not sure how much investigation might cost, but how long is a piece of string? So yeah, I think the cost could be substantial, but I'm not letting that stand in the way of doing what is right. You know, I think residents of this city of Canning would be highly supportive of a council that puts integrity above its own reputation and does what is required, and that's what we need to do.
Thank you.
So I'm not sure how much the cost will be, but if there is an inquiry, I know the legislation says that the Minister may require the local government to pay for it. So it's not unequivocal that we will need to pay for it if it does indeed occur. But if it does occur, the cost could be, I guess, considerable. But that shouldn't change.
Okay, just one last question. So the council resolution was in October that not to extend the CEO's contract, and so now you saying there could be other interim CEOs could be appointed. So that will have to come back again, and maybe dealt with that again.
100% that'll be a decision of council. Whoever is appointed or how they are appointed or when or for what period, that will be a decision of this council. So nothing will be done behind closed doors. We will be fully appraised of that, and I think the item tonight talks about a report coming to this May meeting, which is next week. Well, we have next week is the ACM. Sorry, we've got so many meetings at the moment. Next week, so we'll have a report to consider then.
Okay, just one last question. So we often speak about controls in place. So did anyone think that we could have prevented this happen? I mean, this is someone's behaviour, but also, did we have a question? Anyone or the Jeff Blades or anybody asked us, do you know any of these candidates who have been applied to this position? Did we have that question?
I guess it's a self-reporting prophecy. I mean, all of us here on local government, as one of the councillors said earlier, have done the training. It's incumbent on us, not on anybody else. It's up to us to declare a conflict of interest. If we know of a candidate, it's not up to Lester Blades to be asking questions or asking candidates, perhaps they could, to sign a statutory declaration that they don't know a member of council. It's up to us as councillors to put our hand up, step forward and say, listen, there may be a conflict here, I know this person. That's how this works. So the fact that we've been involved in this process and nobody has declared a conflict of interest should be alarming to all of us if this allegation is later proved. And I think what will be most concerning, and it should be to all of us, that if the allegation is at some time confirmed and proved, that one of us here is that person. Councillor, and engaged in this evening's debate. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
No, my pleasure.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. In case I wasn't clear earlier, I'd also like to confirm on public record it was not me. I'm also very comfortable with the evidence before us. There's clearly information that only this council were aware of that's transpired in these emails. And I have to seriously consider the risks to my reputation in continuing on the panel of the CEO recruitment. I certainly at this stage am not comfortable sitting with my colleagues, knowing that one of them could potentially be, be the person responsible for this. And to address something that Councillor Pondicherry raised earlier, how do we know that the CEO's contract renewal, how do we know that that didn't start then? How do we not know that this person voted against renewing our CEO's contract to open a door for this candidate? It can go back as far as then, and with those questions, there is just no way I'm comfortable continuing this process at all. Thank you.
So just to answer that question, that's why I'll be firm when we speak to the Director General, calling for an inquiry to cover that whole process, because I think they're linked. They are linked processes, and I think the point you make is valid. Anybody else? Councillor Porter, yes.
Yeah, I'm out of questions that'll add anything. So pretty much I'm just going to talk against this one. I'll also clarify that I've not leaked any confidential information and I have nothing to do with the alleged breach. But my concerns are that this item, whether or not intentional, seems to seek to push the CEO recruitment till after the next local government election, as well as extend the current CEO's contract.
Yeah. Are you making an allegation of a conspiracy to keep the CEO on and to subrogate the earlier decision of council? Is that what you're actually alleging? Because that's what you just said. Am I right?
That's not what I said.
What,
I said it seems to.
Can you say again what you
I
just said?
didn't say it did.
Well, can you just repeat it again?
Alright, so I feel that this item has other motivations, which is why I speak against it. Yeah. Okay.
It's on the public record anyway, but I'm just shocked by what I think I just heard you say. So
I would
repeat it again.
Shocked. That's how I read it. So my other issue with this is.
I need to stop you right there and then. So that is a serious breach of our code of conduct in regards to adverse reflection. You are alleging, you said there is a motivation behind this report, and you are alleging, unequivocally in my view, that the administration of the City of Canning has somehow conspired to open the door for the CEO to
should
continue.
clarify, I didn't say any of that.
That's exactly what you just said.
It's not. It's on the
100%.
recording. It isn't.
I would warn you about what you say in this chamber. We're not subject to privilege. I find what you said to be highly offensive to both the CEO and also his executive officers. I would ask you to make an apology unequivocally before we go any further, and then I think I might leave it at that. If you choose not to do so, well then, unfortunately, I will be referring the matter if what I think I heard is what is now recorded on this tape. It just seems to be unforgivable.
All right. I withdraw my statement and apologise.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. For the public record then, that being the case, I accept your apology. I can't speak on behalf of the CEO and his executive members. I will not take the matter any further. But gee, we have to be careful here with banding around allegations like that. God, we have to learn by these mistakes. I'm shocked by that statement. Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, understandably, there's a lot of emotions running around this room tonight, but I think, when I joined this council, and I still have the same opinion, I was thoroughly impressed. I think we should be reminding ourselves that, we are all individuals of strong ethical beliefs and values with the highest integrity, and that has been demonstrated tonight by everybody speaking up about their views on corruption and accountability. And I think, if we draw it back to what we're talking about, which is the recruitment of the selection process, we just need to exercise some caution in responding to uncorroborated information, because this thing that we've got before us, it's an each-way bet. It may be true and it may be false. And we've all got our opinions, but at the end of the day, really, there's only one forum and one organisation that should be responding back to us with any sort of outcome after they have done their investigation processes, and that is the CCC. And that's where this matter lies. This matter has been reported as it should be, because it's extremely serious. It has been reported to the CCC, and it should be left with them to provide us with an investigative outcome, so then we can make an informed decision on where this fits. In terms of the process, Mr. Mayor, I think you gave a response about, I don't know which councillor it was, but I think you gave a response about where does the whole process sit in terms of the length of the selection process before we know what happens with this alleged councillor. And to me, I think that, well, if the process is allowed to continue, which I believe it shouldn't be derailed for something like this, I think that, by the end of the process, we may have an investigative outcome by the CCC that will be able to assist us. But if it doesn't, and we get to the stage where we've selected a CEO, then before we make that appointment, we hold off. We hold off until we do know what the CCC, what the outcome from the CCC is going to be. And in that window of time, we appoint an interim CEO. That's how I believe it should run. So, with that, councillors, that's just my view. I think sometimes we can get emotional and we become quite critical of ourselves, but I think, above all, we do a pretty good job from what I'm seeing, and I think we just need to keep our emotions intact when we're dealing with something like this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sweeney. Councillor Sabiri.
I guess I feel quite uncomfortable voting on this when there's a lack of information, like Councillor Spencer Teo asked a question and you're not able to answer it. And I guess I understand how when you say the public has a democratic right to know something along those lines, but I still feel that I was sort of, I guess, surprised when I saw this item being public, because I just think it might be, I guess, encourage more baseless allegations, and for all we can know, it might be even vexatious. And also, I definitely haven't leaked anything related to this item, and I don't approve of the way of that, how we're all being convicted, I guess, and I wish we, I wish we weren't in this situation, and I don't know what else to say.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kunza.
I'd just like to add a few points given the ongoing debate since. Look, you don't get to choose when you show integrity. You either show integrity or you don't. You don't get to pick and choose when, I should have said. We either make a decision here tonight that we feel as though the process has been compromised. There's credible evidence that's been provided that indicates that it has. If we were to continue down that route of going through this process, on the off chance that the credible evidence turns to nothing, or there's not enough, the person doesn't admit who it was, or anything like that, and we actually go to the end thinking that that's going to happen, but then the person does come out and say that the proof is derived, how could we get to the end of that process and then start all again? How can we hear? I guess the fortunate thing we have here tonight is that we're actually relatively early in the process. How can we continue down this route now, knowing that we know, and just hope that the cards fall our way and that the person that we ultimately pick becomes the CEO? We each have an opportunity tonight to actually show integrity, to pause the process, disband the CEO selection panel, to allow the investigation to proceed, and then we'll have to pick a CEO in between, and there'll be a few options provided. But then at the conclusion of that process, of that investigatory process, we can then start again. But why on earth, this relatively early on, would we decide to continue knowing that the process has been compromised? Why would we? I think we should follow the officer recommendation. There seems to be some people that think that the two can go on at once. I don't agree. I feel as though, especially after tonight's meeting, the process shouldn't continue, and that we should, I guess, recommence the decision to recruit a new CEO once this has, once we know. I mean, it's true, people have said that we might not find out who it is, but we owe it to the people of Canning to do all that we can to investigate this matter appropriately. Councillor Sweeney quite rightly said it's in the hands of the CCC and they're the appropriate people, and we shouldn't, I guess, discuss what may or may not happen. But the reality is we're relatively early in this process and we should suspend it here. We should follow this officer recommendation, and then at the conclusion of that process, then recommence it.
Anyone else before I'll close debate? Oh, well, Councillor Barry.
Just a closing comment, I suppose it relates to something that Councillor Kunja said and Sweeney. I mean, we've sat here tonight and gnashed our teeth over an allegation, and it has in some way besmirched us all, and in some way, I believe what I've heard tonight, we're all supposed to feel guilty. I, for one, am not guilty. You can come and take my phone, you can come and take what you like. But I, and I believe my fellow councillors here, should not be made to feel guilty. We should look at it from the point of justice. We should look at it from the point of just an allegation. We should look at it from the point of view that if the CC thinks that it is worthy of their concern, they will come back to us. I don't think, once again, like Councillor Ponatoura said, I don't think we should be stopping the process, because if it comes to the point where Lester Blades find themselves in a position where they can't or won't go any further with it, then we need to find another firm. So for one reason or another, we still need that selection panel in place, because it will take another month or two just to go through that again. And once again, I'm not feeling guilty, not one iota. and I don't expect that to befall my fellow councillors either, and let the cards fall where they may. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll just keep my comments as brief as I can. I've heard some various debates and I've written a lot down as best as I can. I think if you opened the paper on Saturday, there was a two-page article with the failures, alleging the failures of the I think the previous minister. And if you read the article, there was the CCC was sort of mentioned. It was in Maryville, and it was the former mayor and the current mayor. And so I think, look, the processes are in place. This is not the first time anything like this has happened. You've got two processes. You've got the CCC and you've got the local Department of Local Government. Let them run the process out. I find it actually quite strange that it's been sort of drummed up here in this way. I think that process will go. And look, this wouldn't be the first time that in this chamber there's been accusations, there's been standards panel. There may or may not be ongoing standards panels. We don't know that because those things are confidential. So I think I'm swayed by Councillor Sweeney's comments that, look, let the experts take care of this. They'll come back later. I think that I'm also swayed by Councillor Yasso's comments that we need to keep governing. I think that's an important function. We just can't sort of just turn the engines off and turn the lights off and just sort of bob around in the water. We have had a CEO for the last 5 years, and we're looking for a new one. I think the process needs to go on. If some councillors feel uncomfortable being on the selection panel, then that would be a matter for them to withdraw or not. Be entirely up to them, and there'd be no reflection whatsoever on them personally if they were to do that. So I'm voting against the officer's recommendation. I think it is not necessary, and if this was to happen all the time, when there was any allegation, Maryville would seize up, lots of other councils or councillors would seize up, and they would not to govern. We have an obligation from the ratepayers and residents that live in this city to continue our best practice government. We're not perfect, but we're going forward. We will wait out the CCC and the Department of Local Government, but we need to keep going forward. And this is an important process. I think the people of Canning owe it to us that we keep going with this selection panel. This will take some time. It's not an instant process. It's not like microwave oven where you just put it in and you get it ready. We have a lot of quality candidates on there. It's my understanding that the group of people that we are going forward with has not been compromised. So I think that puts me in a position that I'm comfortable to continue the process. I will be very interested to see how the inquiries go. It's documented by the Mayor and others that paperwork has been lodged, and I'm pleased to say that that's been done because we're covering our obligations. So I'll be voting against this, and I think because we need to govern and it needs to go forward, and if any councillors think they're compromised or a little bit uncomfortable, then if they want to withdraw from the panel, that's entirely up to them. But just to say, oh, we're all getting off it, it's all no good, we'll just turn our engines off and we'll bob around in the ocean, I don't think that's the solution. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
I'll take the opportunity to speak again, since we've been afforded that opportunity. Thank you.
Is this your closing?
Sorry?
No. Is this your closing?
No, not my closing. I'll speak again. I'm going to appeal to those councillors sitting in this room who are sitting on the fence. I'm going to appeal especially to the younger councillors sitting in this room that I feel have a responsibility here, as we all do, to deal with this matter. I must say, without being disparaging, shocked to hear the Deputy Mayor say that he's going to vote against the officer's recommendation. It's bad enough that we have an allegation of corrupt behaviour in this council, but to then make that even worse by having an allegation put to you, a recommendation by the city, and we are now going to, as a council, as a collective, vote to ignore the recommendation of the city and just go on so that we're not bobbing in the ocean. This is not business as usual. Jeff Blades himself, the principal of Leicester Blades, will not continue this process. I read the email. If we don't support the officer's recommendation, they are withdrawing from the process anyway. So I am uncertain why we are talking about not supporting the officer's recommendation. Councillor Barry spoke about not feeling guilty, and he added with emphasis, not one iota. I don't feel guilty, I feel ashamed. As the Mayor of the City of Canning, if this allegation is proven, and even at some stage we're not able to unveil who it is that this person has been speaking to, I feel ashamed. The proudest moment of my life was to be elected to this position, but first of all to be elected to council. Still remember bringing my old mum and dad down when I was sworn in. It's an extraordinary night. So to be sitting here in a council where I reasonably believe we have a member in front of us who has probably already spoken to us tonight, who may be corrupt, is just extraordinary to me. And for councillors to sit here and say that we should probably be feeling okay, that there might be a chance that maybe the other candidates haven't been corrupted in some way, and that we should just continue with business as usual. How do we continue with business as usual? In September 2014, not 7 years ago, this council was sacked. It was dismissed as a result of an inquiry that began in 2012. That was the second time that this council has been dismissed. The 2014 and 1999 episodes were shameful in our history. And in our 150th year as a local government, here we are again sitting on the precipice of facing another inquiry, no matter what that might look like. Councillor Kunza is absolutely right. You can't choose to exercise integrity sometimes and not others. Councillors, we've been elected by our community to step forward and deal with difficult issues. This is a really, really tough issue for us to face. But how can we face our community tomorrow morning, and how can we defend our position, not only to close ranks and protect whoever it is by continuing with this process, and then we will continue the process, and every decision made by that committee will be made, if the allegation is supported at some stage, will have been made in concert with a corrupt councillor. And we're going to allow that to happen, and then we're going to allow that person to sit in the decision on which we actually then select our CEO. And then to make it worse, we're now talking about rejecting the recommendation of the city to cease the process right now at this moment. How can we continue? I'm hearing a lot of justification about why we should just continue with business as usual. I have never faced this in my professional life, an incident of this nature, not ever. And I don't know how to respond other than to say, I'm hoping that the rest of the council, Councillor Bain hasn't spoken yet tonight, I'm hoping councillors will come with me, all of you, and for once we will close ranks and we'll put aside all of our differences and we will do what is right tonight, because the eyes of our whole community are on us. And if you think you can justify voting against the recommendation of these officers in the face of Leicester Blades withdrawing from this process, and you still think that that's the right decision for this council, I honestly am just shocked. And I'll withdraw from the CEO's recruitment process going forward. I don't want to be a part of it, and I won't sully my own reputation and my name by involving myself in a process that I feel has already been corrupted to the point of fertility. It has been fatally compromised. And if you can't see it, I can't understand it. So justify it all you will. But for even those that have already spoken and said that they won't support this recommendation, it is not too late for you to please change tack and support it. We are losing nothing tonight by not going forward. We will still have a CEO, we will appoint one, and we can revisit this process at some stage when the inquiry has been completed. So please stop finding excuses for not doing what we know is right. I'm asking you to join me. Again, put aside our differences, and I know we have some, and let's join together as a collegiate council and do what's right.
It's time, Mr Mayor.
Oh, I'm done. Thank you very much. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll be voting in favour of the officer's recommendation. For me, the process has been compromised with what has transpired, and will be further compromised if the councillor in question remains on the selection panel. I don't want to be on that panel if the compromised person is there. The Triple C needs to investigate this matter. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Anyone else before I close debate? In fact, I may not close debate. Deputy Mayor.
Just to take the indulgence of a second go at bite of the cherry, because it happens very rarely. There was a short list of companies that can do CEO selection. I'm sure that there's many. If we were to proceed with the process, there'd be companies that could indeed assist us with this. You referred, Mr Mayor, to inverted commas corrupt councillor. I'd like to change the language and say that everyone should be presumed innocent until proven guilty. We cannot, as Councillor Sweeney so rightly put, we are not the judge, jury and executor. Let's run that. We are councillors here, elected by, we're the board of the City of Canning, and we need to govern. I believe that we need to continue the process, and if anyone wants to get off that board, I think all of us will have to reassess if we want to be on that. But that's something that I think we need to do is keep going on, because otherwise there is no direction. Without direction, we are lost. Thank you.
Councillor Ponaturo, and then Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a simple question. So this matter came to you. You were notified by Tuesday morning, I suppose, and we met here on Tuesday evening for another meeting. Is that something you think that you could have spoken to us separately as well? I'm just asking as a leader.
I'll be absolutely honest. So I saw the, and this is on the record, so absolutely honest. Jeff Blades, you mentioned earlier, CC'd us both, he didn't. He sent the email to me. I think the email was headed CEO recruitment. If you remember on Monday night, a number of councillors asked for information about candidates, or Jeff Blades was going to provide some reports to council. I get, in my position, a lot of emails, as you can appreciate. I saw the email from Jeff Blades. I just assumed it was a generic email to all of us, including the information that he had promised to send. And honestly, I didn't look at it for it was not until, I can't remember, I've got a full timeline. As you can imagine, I've made extensive notes of everything that's happened since then. But my first email to Jeff was to apologise and say to him that I had only just seen his email. So he sent it to me first thing in the morning. I think it was by memory 6:58 a.m. on Tuesday morning, and I think it may have been Wednesday. Was it Wednesday? Wednesday, when I had seen it for the first time. And so we have hit the ground running since then. And as you can appreciate, there's an awful lot of moving parts behind this, and we needed to make sure, because of the compulsion on us to report this matter properly, that we needed to make sure that we had done that effectively. And that was the first thing we needed to do, was to effectively exercise our requirement under the Act, our obligation, and to see about reporting the matter.
Given that this is a very important matter, and the way we are dealing with it, absolutely like a time bomb, and I would have expected someone like Jeff Blake to make a call to you, to yourself, because CEO is not part of the CEO recruitment process, and we were very clear, and I'm a bit sad to say that I'm not here to condemn him or that, but given that, because even when we were sent, there was a late item on Friday night, because we get often a number of late items at 5:20, 5:30, and until the weekend we weren't known, and then Monday again here evening we are dealing with this, and okay, that's kind of a job we have undertaken, that we will be doing that for the people of Canning. But anyway, so I've just clarified.
Just two things. Look, you raise a good point. And yes, you do. You raise a very good point. In the first instance, I think in hindsight, two things. My fault. I should have checked the email. Look, I get 100 and something odd emails a day and a lot of phone calls and all that stuff, but that's no excuse. I should have checked all the way through them. And then the second fail point is I've got staff that probably could have seen it as well. In hindsight, I think Jeff Blades, if he had his time again, probably would have called me. Can I say, though, on that count, I'm just pleased that he actually sent me the email, because do you know what? He wasn't really obliged to do that, as much as we might think, yeah, of course he should have. If he hadn't done that, we wouldn't be sitting here tonight. We wouldn't even know about it. I am obliged to him for actually doing the right thing and at least having the courage to step forward and provide that information. So, yeah, it's a really difficult situation. I know it was handled late. There was no way around that. We had a special council meeting tonight, and I felt that it really needed to be dealt with as quickly and as expediently as could be done. And we had a lot of people behind the scenes working on reports and trying to pull everything together. Yes, absolutely, it could have probably been dealt with a little bit better, the communication of it, but I still think we have ample evidence in front of us to make a decision tonight, as difficult as it is. Yes, so we just need to...
We are all absolutely professional. We are all busy. We all hold about 5-6 positions and number of emails, but it's up to us, and there's no excuse for anybody, anything. But that's beside that. But anyway, we have plenty of stuff to make a good decision, and professionally as well, and I'm happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thank you. Just wanted to bring back what Deputy Mayor Jacob said earlier. I just want to know what on earth makes anybody think that when the #1 local government recruiter says, no thank you, I don't want to work with you, what makes you think any other recruitment agency is going to want to touch this? I believe letting the dust settle, dealing with this. Perth is such a small place. Local government recruitment is such a small industry. Word's going to get out. Jeff Blades is going to have these candidates ringing him going, what's going on? When am I coming for an interview? And what is he going to tell them? I've extinguished the contract. I don't want to work with Canning Council. What on earth makes anybody think anyone else out there is going to want to? Doesn't matter how much they're paid. If they're going to be up for reputational damage, no one's going to want to touch this. I certainly wouldn't in the professional world.
Thank you. I think that's a valid point. I don't think we're going to have a lineup of people, first of all, maybe to apply to be our CEO, and secondly, to line up to take on this process. Especially, would you take on a professional process like this in the midst of a CCC investigation? I'm certain I would. But look, I'm happy to close. I think we've been dealing with this now for 2.5 hours. It's a very important matter. I'm happy to go further if anyone else would like to speak. No? I need to reinstate standing orders.
It concludes at the end of this item automatically.
Beg your pardon?
Section 14.13, it says it naturally expires at the end of this item.
Yeah, but that's at the end of the item. We're still about to vote on the item. So that'd be after this item expires. So once we've actually voted on the item, to go into the next item, which is a long-term financial plan, that would follow that.
I get the point. Oh. When you close debate, the item's finished and you don't need to reinstate standing orders.
Governance, is that the case? No. Governance?
It'd be my understanding we do have further business tonight, so where you've suspended that standing order, that would continue to apply in your next order of business. So it would be my recommendation that you do make a resolution to reinstate the suspended clause.
You may be right, Councillor, and I don't doubt you, but probably just from the sake of best practice, we'd best to probably move it, second it, and have a vote that we restore. Councillor Holland?
Yeah, I move that we reinstate standing orders, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Kunza. I note your concern. Thank you very much. I'll have a look at that just for my own professional development. And I should know, Councillor Bain has seconded that. Councillors, no need, I think, to speak on the matter. We'll put the matter to the vote to restore standing orders. Standing orders.
The motion to reinstate Standing Orders Clause 7.11 has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you, councillors. I'll close debate on the matter. We've reinstated standing orders, and then we will put the matter to the vote. I don't intend to go song and verse through debunking everything here, but I will make a couple of points. It was raised earlier, and it was quite some time ago. There's been significant water under the bridge since then, but I keep hearing that this is only an allegation and that hasn't been tested. But that's what allegations are. So, you know, when somebody is actually charged by the police and arrested on whatever serious matter it might be, and it might be, I'm not sure, I'll name one, an aggravated sexual assault, those people are often put in jail. They're often refused bail on the basis that an allegation has been made, but it hasn't yet been tested in court and they haven't yet been found guilty. But they actually have their bail revoked and they sit in jail until the matter is determined. It's still an allegation and it still hasn't been tested. That's just what happens. So this will be tested at some stage, but I just find that that whole point about the matter hasn't been tested is quite irrelevant. But isn't that exactly what we're trying to do? We have to actually stop this process now. Our community should expect a standard of behaviour higher from this local government than the expectations that we might have on individuals within our own community. There was a mention, I think, by Councillor Sweeney, and I don't mean to paraphrase what you said, but I think you said something along the lines that, you know, Jeff Blades and people that engage in these processes, you would probably find that this sort of irregularity happens frequently, and I would hope that that's not the case. And I would make the case that this is probably a little bit different. This is about an allegation that somebody on this council is actually providing insider information to benefit an applicant, to make their application and their interview stronger above all others. It's an unequitable position, and to advantage them over all other applicants. And I also make the point, because it was raised earlier, that we don't know how far this extends. We don't know how many people have been spoken to, and we don't know the extent of the allegation or how far it reaches into the process. So we lose nothing as a council by just ceasing the process right now. There's no detriment. We continue. We will have a CEO, whoever we appoint, an interim CEO, and we will let justice take its course. As far as natural justice goes, that's what we're doing. We're suspending this process until we have had an authoritative body hear this matter, provide us with a report, inquire into it and provide us with a report, and then we will restart this matter. That is what natural justice is. So it's difficult with the allegation that has been made, not for a cloud to follow every member of this council, including myself. And others have obviously spoken about the fact that it wasn't them. Clearly, I can tell you quite categorically it wasn't me. And as a mayor, I can tell you it would have been very simple for me to do everything I could to hide what has actually happened. This council, in its history, has been through enough. And it would have been very simple for me very early in my second year as a mayor to try to shield council and the public from what has actually happened. And I think, without tooting my own horn, it takes some measure of personal courage to step forward and confront what's actually occurred. But I do that knowing the implications of what might happen. And if this council at some stage, God forbid, and touch wood, is dismissed, I will happily take that decision with me, knowing that I did what was right. And so I'm only asking tonight that councillors, again, follow me as the mayor, please, and do what is right tonight. We have the spotlight on all of us, and we cannot vote against the CEO recruitment process recommendation. We just can't. And again, Jeff Blades and Lester Blades are withdrawing from it. So where does that leave us? So let's just clear the air tonight. There are no further allegations to be made or aspersions to be put. We simply need to support this recommendation, knowing what we know, and then we will move next Tuesday night at the OCM to discuss the recommendation made to us about the next steps in this process. But let's just clear the deck. Let's just start again and draw a line in the sand on integrity tonight. Without any further ado, I'd like to put this matter to the vote.
The Motion OC-00321 has been carried, 7 in favour, 4 against. Councillors voting against the motion, Councillors Barry, Deputy Jacobs, Porter and Sweeney.
I appreciate your support, councillors. Thank you for that. That was a very difficult decision. Just for the record, I've got Councillor Deputy Mayor, and are you leaving the room? Just leaving the room. Thank you. Councillors. Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. Councillors, we've been here now for 2.5 hours. I might just adjourn the meeting for 10 minutes or so. I'll make it 10 minutes just for a toilet break and just to stretch your legs, and we'll convene in a little while to discuss the long-term financial plan. There's a rush to the door. Thank you, councillors. The time now is 8:29. Please be back here by about 20 to 9. Thank you. Meeting. I've still got the CEO. Is he coming back? I might start the meeting without the CEO. I'm sure he will join us shortly. So just for the record, the CEO is not currently in the room. All others are present. Stacey, we are recording at the moment? Okay, thank you. We'll reconvene the meeting. Thank you for your indulgence, councillors. It's about 19 minutes to 9 p.m. And we will move on to the second item. Karen, what did I call you? Oh, good Lord. It has been a long night and we've got a lot to go through. We're going to move to item 6.1 and that's item CC025 of 21. The subject of that report is reframing the long-term financial plan, and the responsible officer is Director of Canning Corporate and Commercial, Mr. Stephen Kane, who is to my right and your left. We have a recommendation on page 5 of this evening's agenda, and that is also on the screen right now. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? Mover, Councillor Holland. Thank you, Councillor Holland, and also a seconder. Councillor Spencer-Teo, you were first. Councillor Holland, I'll go to you. Councillor Holland.
Mr Mayor, if I can start off before I speak by asking a question.
Yep, go ahead.
Through you to Mr Kane. I noticed that we've got, unless I'm wrong, it's been a night like you said, Mr Mayor, haven't we got another long-term financial plan workshop, is it next week?
Director Kane.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The next item is on the CapEx program for the city's financial 21-22 budget. It's not specifically on the long-term financial plan.
Thank you. That's put my mind at ease here. Mr Mayor, I'll actually speak in favour of this motion. I've been worried a lot through this process, and I've made it clear. I've asked a lot of questions, and also I tried to find one of those water bottles before and I couldn't find them. But I'm pretty happy with the way it's been explained. I understand that thank you very much. The city's situation is not what I would say it would die, but it is in need of repair. Would be probably a good way of putting it forward. I think the option 2, to me, when I went through these again over the weekend and again Saturday, Sunday and Monday and this morning, I actually think that option 2 is the best way forward here. I think it's the only way. I don't like option 1 with the crash and burn, if I might put it that way. The option 3 I don't think works as well. I think this is a good compromise. I understand that we, and I was one of them, that wanted, of course, for my constituents to keep rates as low as possible. I think everybody here should be the same, but you've also got to be responsible. The light's not on, by the way. I'll just keep going. I suspend standing order so I can speak 4 times as well, please.
Your 5 minutes starts now, Councillor Holland, apparently.
I shouldn't have said anything. The train of thought's completely gone. I think everybody's got a responsibility here to try and keep rates as low as possible we can, but we've also got a responsibility to keep the city's budget in surplus, and I think that's more important than just being the lowest rating council. There's quite a few things in there with the 5.6 to 6.6, the rate yield. I can understand how that works now. I think this is, it is the way ahead. It's, to be quite honest, it's sad we've come to this, but it's also happy that we have come to this, if you can understand the contradiction, because if we didn't come to this, we'd be in a worse financial situation that we're in. We're sad we come to this because we are in the financial situation we're in. So there's a bit of a double-edged sword, if you can understand. But what we have to do, we cannot neglect it. We have to make a decision to move forward. It's going to hurt somebody. It's going to hurt my hip pocket too. Another thing that does worry me a little bit, from what I understood, the state government's direction on no increases or no rate rises, or I can't remember the exact terminology of it, was to stay in place now until next year. Can I have some clarification on that? I thought that's exactly what I did read.
Director Kane, can you comment on that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The restriction is only on 2 measures, and that is to retain a hardship policy, which the city intends to do, and as the report refers to, there have been a limited number of cases of hardship, and to retain the restrictions on interest rate charges that are capped at a maximum of 7%. The city charges a significantly lower interest rate, and that's the only 2 effectively restrictions. The only other requirement is if the council were required to go and seek ministerial approval for the advertising of differential rates. However, having already established a differential rate structure, we're not obliged to go and do that again.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll leave it there because I've gone over my time, so thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge and thank Sian for her deputation. It's almost word for word what I was going to say, but thanks, Sian. Certainly increasing rates is not something that any council or councillor wants to do. However, in order to provide a level of service that not only meets expectations of the community, but that can one day exceed them, unfortunately, it has to be done. Our assets are ageing, our residents are begging for new and improved playgrounds and facilities. In fact, I've had several parents come up to me wanting to know where they can donate money to contribute towards playgrounds, and my answer is always the same. If we need to put up rates, please understand this is one of the reasons why. Sporting clubs and community groups, they can't meet the demands of their members due to the condition of our assets and our restricted budgets. Being a Band 1 local government with over 35,000 ratepayers means a very small increase can go a long, long way. As demonstrated, even with a small increase, the City of Canning will remain one of the lowest rateable Band 1 local governments in the metro area. For those who are struggling, remember we do have the financial hardship policy which will remain in place, and I encourage anyone who's in a position of a financial difficulty to please give our staff a call and work out a plan that suits your circumstances. We are here to help. I'm encouraged to see many cost-cutting areas identified from our executives in the proposed option 2, and I believe that with a little bit of give and take, together we can make this city a thriving one with assets and facilities we can all be proud of. Without this small increase, there's no way we are going to be able to deliver the projects that our community has been promised. It's so looking forward to, also desperately deserves, and I really hope my fellow councillors feel the same way and will also support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer-Teo. Anyone else like to speak before we put the matter to the vote? Councillor Kunza, have you got a question? You had a quizzical look on your face.
Yeah, I've always got a quizzical look on my face. Ask my family. Just a couple of questions. Recommendations, point 7 of the recommendation basically says receives a communication plan, but we don't have a communication plan. Point 95 of the paragraph says that we need to develop one. Why does it say receives one?
Director Kane.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It says receives a communication plan, not the communication plan. The intent is that once council makes a decision, we need to be able to clearly articulate the reasons why and bring that back to council. That would be done as part of the proposed differential rates item, which will then subsequently come to council.
Thank you.
So would it not be more prudent, given that we're not actually receiving it as part of this, to actually request a communication plan?
Director, is that semantics or is that necessary?
Yes, Mr Mayor, it probably would be. We could say change it to request a communication plan. It's effectively asked that council is asking us to produce one, which you will receive. So I'd be happy either way, Mr Mayor, with received or requests.
So I'll Councillor, if you're proposing a minor amendment, I'll accept that as a minor amendment. And that will then read, because it's a decision of council, that council requests a communication plan that sets out the rationale, etc., etc., etc.
Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Oh, Councillor Spencer-Teo, are you in agreement with that? And also Councillor
Yes, I'm fine with that.
Councillor Holland? Yeah. Councillor Holland? Councillor Holland, are you okay with that?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Okay, and Councillor Spencer-Teo has agreed. Councillor Kunza, you now changing your mind?
No, I've just got further questions.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
When would the city be planning to actually communicate the decision and espouse what the long-term financial plan, if accepted tonight, means? There's obviously a number of people like throwing mud at the City of Canning, and I'm just wondering if we're going to be on the front foot with actually espousing what this means.
Director Kane.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The intent is to meet tomorrow with the staff. We've already had preliminary meetings with the communications manager, regardless of what council's decision is tonight, to look at how that would be communicated. This material has been put into the public domain deliberately to create the transparency which this council has often asked for. So the intent would be to meet for that. We have the option to bring our late item to next week's meeting dealing with differential rates. Under the state government's budget timetable for local governments, we're supposed to commence the advertising of differential rates in May. That allows us, with a good governance, to be able to adopt a budget by the end of June, therefore allowing for a new budget to come into next year. So I suspect that the CEO, the communications manager who's sitting at the back, and myself and others will be working overtime to put that together for you tomorrow. A lot of it would be framed around the lines that are already contained in this report.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Kunza, anything further?
No, I'll just speak in favour of the officer recommendation. I'll start off responding to, I guess, a question or a comment that Councillor Holland said before about what the state government requests of us. I mean, one of the points in this report is that utility bills are proposed to go up 9%, and that's one of the things we have to factor in. So to then ask the local government sector to rein in rate rises whilst proposing to put them up 9% would be quite an audacious thing to do. Look, based on the variances of our previous long-term financial plan, look, it's prudent that we make a few changes to, I guess, reflect what the current situation is. And the reality is, based on everything that we've been provided, the workshops and so forth, that we do need to increase our rates in the short term. But this isn't, I mean, I've heard comments through the process, but I don't believe it's, I guess, a result of a financial mess or bad investments or anything like that. But the reality is that the City of Canning has kept rates low for so long that, I guess, COVID exposed the fact that we're not on a sustainable footing. I mean, there's numerous local governments across Perth that were able to dip into their unbelievable reserves last year to actually provide relief to their ratepayers. Now, I wondered why no questions were ever asked. Why do these local governments have so much in their reserves? And given that we've kept our rates so low for so long, I guess we didn't have the capacity to do what they did. And I mean, some information provided at one point basically showed that between 2001 and 2019, the city increased its rates by just under 65%. During that period, the town of Vic Park increased their rates by just under 125%, Melville around 76%, Cosnells around 81%. I mean, the average across Perth was 83% from 2001 to 2019. Canning was 20% lower than the Perth average across that period. So when we increase our rate in the dollar, I mean, as the long-term financial plan proposes in the short term, we start from a very low base. And I guess that helps us make us more sustainable in the long term. I mean, our previous long-term financial plan basically had 3.5% every year. After the first 3 years, we're looking at 2.5% every year. The reality is that it allows us to be a bit more consistent for ratepayers. And whilst, like I imagine everyone here, we'd prefer not to increase rates, it's my belief that the majority, I think, as a few councillors before me, and even I commend Sean before, in terms of we do need to provide, I guess, a better level of service to the community. I mean, how many of us are consistently getting told that the number of trees and level of tree canopy cover across the City of Canning is just diabolically low. I mean, that costs a lot of money to try to increase our playgrounds, the community facilities, the sport lighting at many of our reserves. This costs money, and I think we need to actually look at the revenue we have to make sure that we can spend the money on our community. We keep getting that feedback. I mean, we need to invest. There needs to be a balance between low rates and quality service. And at the moment, with the backlog we have over so many areas, I think people understand that we need to be able to invest. And it's not just about 1 or 2 master plans. It's about investing in our environment, planting thousands of new trees, preserving our waterways. It's about replacing, upgrading many of the playgrounds across the city of Canning. And people are demanding this. Now, I'm confident that this plan proposed by the administration does this without putting too much of a financial impost on our residents. And I think this, I guess, if approved by council and the buy-in from council, that we need to consistently refer to it. I mean, staff often talk about our long-term financial plans, but we can't make ad hoc decisions, whether it be leasing arrangements or increasing funding on projects or new projects, or when we have to always refer it back to the long-term financial plan and understand the economic impact of our decision making. When we make land purchases and not the relevant land sales that were tied into that, the effect that that has going forward, not from an operating perspective, from a budget perspective, we need to actually understand that. And I think we've all got ways to learn, but I think that's one way this council can, I guess, improve in the future. So I ask you all to support this recommendation and give some sort of direction for this budget process. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Ponaturoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You remembered. I put my hand up a bit earlier. Thank you. I too will be supporting the 10-year long-term financial plan because I've looked at the 3 options and I'm quite comfortable with the option 2. Because that's by 2024 we will be almost in a better stabilized financial situation for City of Canning from where we are now. So that's a good 3-year plan, and it's also the time the land valuation will be coming, so it'll give us a bit of a time to get our hurdles and make some money to pay the bills. One of the items was quite often discussed was asset management strategy, and very much Director Kane accepted and is shown about how the conditions of the assets, and we don't have reserves or depreciation. So I would like to see we look at all of these items quite regularly now going forward, that we as the councillors also, we would like to get a bit more information, not to get into the operational matters, but in a strategic way, that we also take the responsibility because we add up the budget, so we take the responsibility. So the information to be coming to us, and whether are we comfortable we are all going in the right direction, so that we don't come back after another year or 2 and then start again. So definitely I would like to be, and I will probably do that. And yes, I think Councillor Kunz has touched about the comms and marketing strategy, which I quite often harp about. The comms strategy is very important, given that there will be rates increase, and of course, given the election coming up also in October. So that will be quite challenging for some of us. But then how do we communicate? What's exactly in the comms strategy is going? If that also can be even discussed among us or even explain to us, so we can also talk in the same languages, so we're not just sharing something what's on a social media, and because we want to know in detail how we can discuss that to the public. And of course, I keep asking, one of the things about the dashboard reports or any other reports, 1-page report for financial report, anyone with a financial background or even without financial background could just understand what's our revenues and expenditure at a glance, ops versus capex, and how are we traveling. So all that kind of a thing. We're also very busy, but we should be knowing monthly where we are at. All of these items, revenue versus expenditures, operation versus capex, and major items. So I would like to see that we improve and we take more responsibilities. And on that note, I'd like to support that. But we need to also, one thing we should be in mind, that we should review this annually very closely, not when we get into the deficit position, but we have to very closely monitor these reports and I'll be getting involved in that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I listened to Councillor Kunz, and I think that he certainly does articulate the business economics of the council very well. And in any other time, I probably would agree with his assessment. But it's not another time. We live in a global pandemic, and I guess I'm going to be speaking against the officer's recommendation, because I'm speaking up for the people that can't afford this, that can't afford a rate rise above inflation. And there's a lot of those people out there, particularly in small business. Every time there is a lockdown, thousands and thousands of dollars are lost with small business. And unless you are in small business, I can't expect anyone to understand what impacts it has on people's lives. So for me, I think that there needs to be a greater understanding, and I don't think there is. I don't think there has been enough consideration for our current position and economic responsibilities, particularly towards our ratepayers, hardest hit by COVID-19. The strategy's responses contained, I think, in this proposal are more in line with a world that was pre-COVID. Pre-2021 is something completely different to the world where we are at the moment and where we're going. I think what we need is a forward-thinking plan, and it needs to extend to the current financial hardships that exist and the potential for more to come. And I think this should be the focus, and I don't think it has been. And I just think there needs to be some broader considerations included in this plan that takes into consideration a lot of people in our community that simply just can't afford a rate rise. And when I speak like that, there are so many people out there, and unless you live in these people's lives, whether they're small business or even in terms of our ratepayers, the global pandemic has been crucial in destroying lives and people's home. We've had more people lose their homes, we've had more people go bankrupt. And this is a time when I think we need a lot more understanding of our own financial position within the community as a council. And for those reasons, I can't support it. I could support it if there was more in it, in terms of a different way ahead, a different strategy, or even some further options on how we could get ourselves out of the financial position that we're in at the moment. And I'm not entirely sure how we got there. It's been explained, but I'm still without a lot of clarification in some areas about how we got here to this position. And in any other time, I would agree. I would think that we need to put in strategies to include rate rises, to do all the things that Councillor Kunz has said within our community. But this certainly isn't the time. And I think that a lot of these things should be taken into consideration, particularly with something like the long-term financial plan. So for those reasons, councillors, I won't be voting for this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Sweeney. Look, I'll just speak very quickly on this, just to say I do support the item in its entirety. I do take the point in relation to hardship, but quite frankly, I think we have all asked the question at times about the success of our hardship policy, which we took a great deal of time to develop and implement in the height of the pandemic. And I think to date, and I'll stand to be corrected, but I think we have had, Director Kane, only a handful of people from the 100,000 residents and 35,000 homes in the city of Canning. We have had, you're showing me 10? We have had, despite advertising it and having it available, we have had 10 people in total apply for this hardship policy, and that was actually during the height of the pandemic, when possibly if there was a detriment and an impact, that was when it was at its worst. I also agree that in relation to the communication plan, though, that we should make an effort as part of this to again advertise that that is still a policy that is ongoing and available. I think that should be part of the communication. Just my own point of view, Director Kane, I'm certain it probably will be. I would also like to mention the earlier delegation where deputation, where Sian mentioned sometimes we need to have the courage to make difficult decisions. I agree totally, and I don't think this is necessarily a difficult position we find ourselves in, but only from the point of view that all of the things that were raised about we need to have a plan going forward to get ourselves out of this position. This is what it is. It's a long-term financial plan, and it sets out in great detail. And I'm very appreciative of not only the detail provided by Director Kane, but the manner in which he provided it. I've been on council now since 2015. I actually learnt an awful lot during this process, in no small part from his own, the way he articulated it to council, but also the patience he took in explaining it to us. So I'm very, very grateful for that. I also do take the point, it's difficult sometimes for us to reconcile just how low our rating is across this city. And I think when you see us in comparison to even councils like Armidale, and I certainly don't mean that disparaging, considering our proximity to the Perth metropolitan area, we're only a few minutes out of the Perth CBD on the doorstep of the river here, we are still rating lower than councils that you would just expect that we would not. This plan really does set out a sensible long-term framework which will quickly place this 150-year-old municipality on a sound financial footing and allow us to deliver the type of facilities and services and recreation options that a modern, vibrant, growing council should be able to provide. And I echo the sentiment from Councillor Spencer Teo. Crikey, you've only got to see sometimes the amount of criticism at times on Facebook pages and other social media and probably on other channels about the fact that people can't actually see where we're spending the money. I think sometimes it's not so much about the small incremental rate rises, but actually demonstrating to people where their money is being spent. We do have people demanding wonderful facilities for their children as they grow, playgrounds and beautiful outdoor spaces. We have got a burgeoning multicultural community, and we've been able to provide an intercultural centre in Bentley. But having said that, we have got an enormous amount of issues we need to deal with financially in the next couple of years because of what the type of services and facilities that our growing community is going to demand of us. And we need to put ourselves on a financial footing where we have the resources at hand to be able to deliver those. I feel very comfortable with this plan. It's not going to be popular with everybody, but the point was made too that in the City of Canning, out of our 35,000 residences, that I think the figure, and again, Director Kane, correct me if I'm wrong, that about 36% of our residences are actually not owner occupied. So they are actually rentals. Am I close to the mark on that, Director?
You're right on.
I'm right on it, 36%. So those landowners, those homeowners, those investors, and I imagine that some of them have multiple investment properties and some may only have one, but irrespective, we know from what we're reading locally that a lot of those, now that the moratorium on rentals has been released by state government, a lot of them chose to actually put their rents up. So none of those people that are in rentals at the moment are affected by this. And notwithstanding either that, with these rent rises, every pensioner in the City of Canning receives a 50% discount on their rates. So please don't be thinking, I feel very comfortable again with this incremental rise. It's only a very, very small amount annually, and I know that I'm over my 5 minutes, so I will stop speaking. I implore you to support the councillors, the recommendation, of the City. Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Barry, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'll speak against it. I concur with a lot of the comments that was made by Councillor Sweeney. I agree with some of the comments you made, Mr. Mayor. Also, from the point of view of demand, I understand the demand, but from this perspective, and I understand we need a long-term financial plan. From my perspective, I've read this and I've attended all the meetings. I just sort of think in its current form, it's basically a little incomplete. And my reasons are many and varied, and I'll go through them. I'm trying to be as concise as I can. Firstly, most importantly, as before, I said I believe it's an incomplete document. This was alluded to by Mr. Greg Godwin, who was speaking here the other night. And on page 66, he says, the long-term financial review also identified that the city's asset management plans are not fully mature and previously have not fully informed the long-term financial plan with detailed information excuse me, that would assist in decision making. The difference between the budgeted deficits of the actual deficits of the leisure centres and aged care services is an ongoing concern. But the one that sort of gets me, I think it's in number 4 up there, initiates expenditure reduction. He goes on to say, finally, how cost savings of $3 million per annum will be achieved is yet to be detailed. And that's also, so the asset management plan, which presumably informs the long-term financial plan along with the strategic plan. Well, we know that the strategic plan is currently in review. And as for the asset management plan, we've got 4 there, $31 million for the buildings, but 1 is in draft and all the rest are in development. So I'm not quite sure when they, as Mr. Godwin says, will be fully matured and matured enough to suitably inform a long-term financial plan. Essentially, this long-term financial plan, as we see it, is a recipe of the future, and rate rises are very much a part of that. I mean, I can't wait to see the budget and the workshops that we do on that. And these future rate rises are supposedly factored into a 10-year plan. Now, it wasn't that long ago that our current Prime Minister stated that it was almost an impossible task to structure 10 years, and in essence 4 years was even as bad. And it would seem that local government is no exception. And as I read through the document and through the workshops we've had, many of the problems, and one in particular, land asset sales, have been a bugbear. As it was predicted, we would have sales of $5 million, or $5 to $8 million to balance the budget. That didn't happen, and may not for years to come. Interest rates are historically low and are forecast to remain that way until at least 2024. And as you said, Mr. Mayor, house prices and renters will rise. Renters are probably copping it more than anybody now. But it would seem, as I'm reading, that the commercial property which the county intends to sell are uncomfortably lagging with the same sort of interest, well below in recent times of break-even value, as well as the land purchases. The city has made in recent years many decisions that were not budgeted. A lot of them are on demand, as Councillor Kuhn said, and required borrowings for payment from the municipal fund. And that also applies to some of the boutique projects that come up and are not budgeted and require funds by budget amendments. These types of...
Sorry to interrupt you, you're over 5 minutes.
You don't want me to go on?
No, been a long night. Can you wind up just very quickly?
Well, I'll probably be the last person to speak against it, so if you wouldn't mind indulging.
I'm not sure about that, but
I'll ask for an extension.
I'd need a motion to extend it. If you're happy to wrap it up quickly, I'll give you a bit of leeway if you want to just wrap up your argument there. You look like you've got reams of paper. I'm not certain that's
There's a very small
fair.
pad.
Sorry?
Very small pad with very big writing.
Look, I'll give you 30 seconds. Just wind it up if you can. Yep.
Well...
I wound up right on 5. I went, OK, that's it. Sorry, I'm over time. And I stopped. Dead.
Yep. OK, well, there I must say then to my fellow councillors, I'm quite aware that you'll probably think that I'm talking through my head, but essentially, like I said, I've read it. I'm uncomfortable with it as an incomplete document. Like I said, strategic plan and the asset management plan are there to inform it. They're not there in their entirety in any shape or form, and that's one of the major points why I can't, in my own mind, and on behalf of the ratepayers that I represent, vote for it. Because last year we were told we were to be borrowings and we haven't had any. Okay.
Terrific. Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Barry. Thank you, councillors. Does anyone else wish to speak against it or for it? Deputy Mayor.
Try and keep my comments as brief as possible, but I think this document does. I'll be voting to support it because I think I found option 2 the most palatable from the parameters that I looked at it. We need to plan for the future. It's a 10-year rolling plan. We can't read the future, but we just need to give the best read as it is. So it might come to the fact that in a few years it doesn't fit our requirements or parameters, and then we'll have to adjust it. But we just can't say, oh, we don't want one now because we don't know what the future holds. Although having said that, I do take certain truths from especially what Councillor Sweeney said about the COVID situation. I don't think we're out of the woods there yet. I mentioned a book last time. It's called The New Great Depression by James Richards, and it goes into it does an analysis of all these sort of pandemics and says that up to the next 10, 20 years, you could definitely have those ongoing side effects. So I wanted to also pay tribute to Director Kane. I think he's done a very good job and he's hit the ground running coming to Canning. That's pretty much my comments, Mr Mayor. I'll be voting for it, and although we may need to come back to this if circumstances change in the next few years.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Does anyone else wish to speak on this matter before I hand it back to Councillor Holland to close, and then we'll put the matter to the vote? Thank you. Councillor Holland, did you want to close debate?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I heard all the arguments there, the pros and cons. I heard Councillor Sweeney speak, especially on the hardship clauses. I might remind that one of those clauses were put in that there was no interest on periodic payments, which was my motion because I was very aware of the situation. We got put in an incredibly dire situation, if you want to call it a triple whammy in a way. We had the COVID itself and the ramifications of that. We had the state government's response for COVID of not allowed to put our rates up. And then we also had the situation which I think Councillor Berry or you, Mr Mayor, or someone mentioned that the interest rates were historically low, so we were getting bugger all money, Councillor Berry bugger all money anyway, so it was a bit of a triple whammy. I think we have to have a long-term financial plan. It's been proven now that we have to have one. This, to me, is the best that we've got. Option 2 is the best option we've got. We cannot go. We have to align it with the budget in better than what was being done in the past and have the budget aligned with a long-term financial plan. We also, as Councillor Barry mentioned, with the asset management plan and the strategic plan, they've all got to be aligned together so they work together, and we cannot go in without a long-term financial plan to start things running. As much as I can understand people who can't, if they can't afford it, that it's tighter and tighter and tighter. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. I have got no solution to that. I cannot say, I'm not going to be say anything to exacerbate that. Some people are going to find it harder. I hope that we even go further in advertising our hardship clauses and our hardship plans and encourage people. Although I do understand when Councillor Sweeney said, that, or whoever it was said that 10 or 12 of them or whatever the only people who have been applied for it, and I do understand that people don't apply for it because they don't want to apply for it. They don't want to be seen to be needing to apply for it, and probably I would be one of those, I would be probably penny pinching somewhere else so that I didn't have to go cap in hand, as it were. So we've got to make it so it's more available to people if they need it. I think we've got to do that a little bit better if we can. But the plan option 2 here, I think, is the way ahead. Even with COVID and everything else, we cannot sustain our situation we've got at the moment. It's as simple as that. We can't keep going along. We can't suspend it for a year. We can't, as I think Mr. Kane puts, kick it down the road. It may be that some of our master plans might have to be put off for a little bit of time, suspended but not cancelled, till we get back into a better situation. It's all very well where everyone says, oh, we want this, we want that, we want a great big playground here, we want 20 libraries here, we want this here. The fact remains they've got to be paid for, and the money's got to come somewhere. I think we've done a reasonably good financial situation that you've provided here as far as trying to cut down our costs. You've explained that every directorate's been involved in that, which I think is most important, because I don't want to put all the burden on ratepayers. I don't want to put the interest rates up at all, quite frankly. Who wants to? But I will make the hard decision, and this is one of the hard ones, and that's what we were put in here to make as well. So I'll leave it at that without rambling on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Just for the record, you weren't rambling at all. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Holland, for closing debate. Councillors will now put the matter to the vote. Thank you, Governance.
Motion CC-02521 has been carried, 9 in favour, 2 against. Councillors Sweeney and Barry voting against the motion.
Thank you. Councillors, just stay in your seats just for the time being. We're nearly finished. At item 7, confidential reports, there are none. At item 8, which is closure, there being no further business, I now declare the meeting closed. The time, by my recollection, is just after 9:22 p.m. Thank you, and I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance. We'll see you all back here tomorrow night. Thank you, councillors.